Chapter 1204. There's one more thing. Although there's no time limit in the Venerable Realm, and you can stay in there for as long as you want, I'm sure you've heard that there was once a person who tried for a few years but was unable to break through. However, he was unwilling to give up, and in the end he was tortured into a lunatic. Not only did he lose hope of breaking through, he was even killed by the ferocious beasts. Zhou Wanxian's tone changed again. Xiao Qin rubbed his nose, turned his head and whispered to Qing Menjing, "Did you realize that this Zhou Wanxian's speech is full of emotions? Those who don't know him might think he's a late-night radio host." "What do you know? How is this a radio host? This is the host who tells stories, Xiao Gang." Qing Menjing rolled her eyes at Xiao Qin and said emotionally, "Hello everyone, welcome to the Qingji breakfast shop sponsored and broadcasted." Before she could finish, Tian Souring also moved closer. "Sister Menjing, what are you talking about? Where's the Qingji breakfast shop? Sister Souring is hungry and wants to go eat." "Ahem, nothing." Qing Menjing finally realized what she had said. Her face instantly turned red and she stared angrily at Xiao Qin. Xiao Qin spread his hands innocently. "Why is it my fault again? I'm being wronged." The disciples below the stage all had a look of disapproval, because what Zhou Wanxian had said was something that had happened many years ago. Nowadays, many sects had gone through many trials in the Venerable Realm, and had already grasped a certain cultivation pattern. Only those who did not know the situation and had weak willpower would go crazy for no reason. As for the so-called ferocious beasts, they were not even worth mentioning. Since everyone had formed teams with their sects, they would definitely form teams to search for treasures. Even if they encountered a ferocious beast, they would definitely be able to fight it. Even if they could not kill it, they would definitely be able to escape unscathed. If they were lucky, they might even be able to earn a fortune. The thoughts of the disciples naturally did not escape the eyes of the president on the stage. Zhou Wanxian smiled faintly, a hint of disdain flashing in his eyes, and said slowly, "Those of you who have such thoughts, feel free to stay in there and try. However, don't blame me for not warning you beforehand. The Venerable Realm will produce 5 elements calamity at random times, and in random areas. Those who are tired of living or think that they are lucky enough to withstand all 5 elements calamity, can stay and experience it." 5 elements calamity? Everyone had never heard of this term. For a moment they were a little confused. They looked at each other in confusion. As the name suggests, the 5 elements tribulation occurs in a certain area of the Venerable's secret realm. There will be natural disasters such as hailstorms, lightning strikes, fissures, and gales. Of course, I'm sure you've all experienced these disasters in the inner martial world, or perhaps you've heard about them from your seniors in your sections. However, compared to the Venerable's secret realm, the natural disasters in the inner martial world are nothing. Zhou Wanxian explained proudly, feeling that he was at the top of everyone's IQ. The originally nonchalant crowd was shocked at this moment, and all of them fell silent. Recalling that most of the seniors in the sect had died after encountering the 5 elements tribulation, and the few who were lucky enough to survive, when they described the scene that was like hell on earth, their eyes exuded an indescribable sense of fear. The wishful thinking that had sprouted in the hearts of the disciples under the platform suddenly vanished. So that was the 5 elements calamity. Many of them thought to themselves, the Venerable Realm is so dangerous, it is indeed not a place to play tricks. Once I have successfully broken through, I'd better hurry up and come out, lest I lose my life in there. Alright, that's all I have to say. Now, all the sects and clans can line up and draw lots to enter the Venerable secret realm according to the order. After saying this, Zhou Wanxian did not stay any longer. His figure flashed and he disappeared from the stage without a trace. After that, many staff members of the Venerable Realm Alliance walked out from behind the stage. They checked the names of all the participants and collected the corresponding spiritual jades. After each sect paid the spiritual jades, someone would carry a big box for them to draw lots. The Jia family had drawn the 3rd last lot, and the 6 Direction sect happened to be in front of them. The Tang family followed them into the secret realm, and the Open Heaven sect, the leader of the demon sect, was the last to enter. "Ah, Xiao Qin, are you stupid? As a venerable expert, why are you following us into the secret realm?" Xiao Qin was waiting in line to enter the secret plane out of boredom. Suddenly, an arrogant voice came from behind him. Furthermore, it sounded rather familiar. Xiao Qin rolled his eyes, turned around and stared at that person as if he was looking at an idiot and said coldly, "Tang Qianling, are you itching for a beating? It seems that the injuries from my beating have recovered. Do you feel nostalgic? Do you want to do it again? I guarantee that you will not be able to enter the Venerable Realm this time." "Oh, I don't believe that you would dare to beat me up in public. Tang Qianling laughed coldly. Let's not talk about the experts from the Venerable Realm Alliance, even my grandfather can. Ouch! Before Tang Qianling could finish his sentence, he felt a slap on the right side of his face. He spun a few times on the spot, swayed for a while, and finally stood up with great difficulty. Oh yes, Tang Qianling, what did you say just now? What does your grandfather want to do? Is he going to treat me to a meal? Xiao Qin dusted off his hands as if he was dusting off dust, looked at the sky, and whistled as if it had nothing to do with him. You! Tang Qianling felt a burning pain on his right cheek. He looked around and saw that the Venerable Realm Alliance staff were busy counting people, and did not seem to have noticed what had happened. Tang Qianling could not do anything to Xiao Qin and could only point at his nose and said fiercely, "Just you wait, Xiao Qin. Once we enter the Venerable Realm, even if you have the ability to go to heaven or hell, you will be beaten up by us, not to mention a venerable expert." Sigh, looks like you have been beaten up silly by me, haven't you? You can't do anything to me outside. Don't tell me you'll be able to cheat inside? Xiao Qin shrugged and sighed helplessly. Although Xiao Qin was being sarcastic, he still looked into the distance cautiously. As expected, he immediately noticed something amiss. The venerable experts from the Tang clan, Yu clan, and the other clans did not follow the group into the Venerable Realm. Instead, they turned around and returned to the inn at the pier. What was going on? Could it be that the experts of these clans and sects were not worried that their disciples would be killed inside? Chapter 1205. Although the seclusion site provided protection measures, these weaklings were likely to be killed by others before they reached the seclusion site. Xiao Qin could even imagine that there were only so many seclusion sites. If they wanted to snatch these places, it would definitely be a bloodbath. Thinking of this, Xiao Qin was too lazy to care about Tang Qianling. Instead, he turned to Jia Muzin and asked, "Muzin, why did the venerable masters who led the teams go back? Do they have other ways to enter the venerable secret realm without spending spiritual jades?" Oh them. Jia Muzin looked up and said casually, "They won't enter the secret realm. They are waiting for their disciples and clansmen to return at the inn outside." What if some of the venerable masters of the clans go in and kill the martial kings and demon kings in order to seize the seclusion site for their clansmen? Xiao Qin asked in surprise. Jia Muzin was startled. Suddenly, he slapped his forehead and quickly explained, "Oh, I forgot to tell you that after entering the venerable secret realm, everyone's strength will be suppressed to the realm of the martial king Great Perfection and the demon king Great Perfection. Although they have the power of the venerable in their bodies, when they activate their martial qi and demonic qi, they will be suppressed to the realm of the king. The purpose is to prevent the situation you just mentioned from happening. If those venerable masters destroy the balance and kill the disciples of other clans and sects to hinder their advancement, the situation will be out of control." Oh, so that's how it is. I was wondering why Tang Qianling was so proud. Xiao Qin shrugged his shoulders nonchalantly. So be it. After all, he was a cultivator. Who knew if this lousy secret realm would be able to see through his true strength? Besides, even if I am also suppressed to the realm of the demon king Great Perfection, I have enough ability to kill them. Moreover, I have the help of the fire of the underworld and little demon in. If it really doesn't work, I can let the elder heaven ancestor possess me. I have so many tricks up my sleeves. Why should I be afraid of a few insignificant people? Xiao Qin, although we all know that you are very powerful, I think we should be more careful when we go in. Jia Muzin was not as optimistic as Xiao Qin. He lowered his voice and said, "Even if Cheng Minjing and I have successfully advanced to the Venerable Realm, our strength will still be stuck at the peak Martial King Realm and the peak Demon King Realm. If any of our enemies target us and take the opportunity to attack us, we may not be able to escape every time. Moreover, the Mystery Land itself is full of dangers." Recalling Chou Wanqian's description of the calamity of 5 elements, Jia Muzin still felt a lingering fear. After entering the Venerable Realm, other than avoiding the schemes of others, he also had to be on guard against the calamity of 5 elements. It was not a safe place at all. In fact, Jia Muzin was not willing to let Xiao Qin take the risk. He was worried that he would be impulsive and have an accident. However, considering that Cheng Minjing and the others were going together, Xiao Qin would definitely be worried. So Jia Muzin did not say his inner thoughts in the end. Hee Xiao Qin, now you know how powerful it is, right? Tang Qianling stood far away and saw Xiao Qin and Jia Muzin whispering, so he immediately laughed loudly. Tang Qianling did not dare to approach Xiao Qin again, lest he would be beaten again. He just sneered from afar, "What a pity. Now that you have handed over the spiritual jade and registered your name, It is too late to regret it. Otherwise, the people of the Mystery Land Alliance will think that you are playing with them and will take you down. What's the point of saying so much nonsense? This young master is a nouveau riche and doesn't lack anything in my hands, much less spiritual jades. I'm more than happy to tour the place. Later on, I'll bring my pet dog over and let it cultivate there as well. When the time comes, the invincible venerable dog will come out and let the dog bite a fool like you to death. Xiao Chen laughed coldly and said without a care in the world. Ah. After hearing Xiao Chen's words, Tang Qianling's group immediately laughed unscrupulously. They all felt that Xiao Chen must have been scared out of his wits. He actually started spouting nonsense. Let a pet dog become a venerable? Only an idiot from the secular world like Xiao Chen could say such brainless words. Among them, Tang Qianling laughed the loudest. From his point of view, Xiao Chen was not far from death. As long as they entered the venerable realm, Xiao Chen's cultivation would be suppressed. In addition, Tang Qianling had already made the necessary arrangements. No matter how powerful this kid was, he would not be able to withstand the attacks of so many martial kings and demon kings at the same time. Xiao Chen, even if you are the monkey son, you will not be able to escape from the five-finger mountain of the big sects and families. By the way, Xiao Chen, if you did not mention it, I would have almost forgotten about it. Cheng Menjing's expression suddenly changed. She pulled Xiao Chen and said anxiously, "Our universe invincible dog is still in the pet shop. I don't know how it is now. We have not returned for so long. Will the shop owner mistreat it?" Cheng Menjing now regretted leaving in such a hurry that she did not bring the invincible dog with her. Although the invincible dog did not seem to be a special breed and its bloodline was not pure, it was a very smart dog. It was such a waste to leave it in the pet shop. Yes. Sister Sour has seen that dog before. It's quite cute and it's very human-like. No matter what order Sister Sour gives it, it will follow. Tian Sour said excitedly, "What's its name again? The Universe Invincible Super Dog?" Wrong. It is the Universe Invincible Super Dog, not the Invincible Super Dog. Cheng Menjing waved her hand, then went into a daze. She muttered to herself, "Why do I feel like this scene is a little familiar?" Don't worry, I have already asked Ling Qinyu and Su Chuxia to bring the invincible dog away. Xiao Chen knew that Cheng Menjing was recalling the happy times they had in the villa. He smiled and said, "The invincible dog should be in their dormitory now. Nothing will happen to it." In fact, Xiao Chen only remembered about the invincible dog 2 or 3 days after leaving Lan City. He quickly called Ling Qinyu and asked her to bring the dog back and keep it by her side. Cheng Menjing heaved a sigh of relief. She was indebted to Invincible Dog and it was her first pet. Although it wasn't pretty, it was smart. She didn't want to give it up so easily. As the queue continued to move forward, it was finally the Jia family's turn to enter the teleportation portal. However, this portal could only teleport one person at a time. They had to enter one by one according to the order. The other clans and sects would enter according to seniority. The Jia clan did not have so many unnecessary formalities. Xiao Chen was the closest to them, so he planned to enter first. This way he could explore the way first. Then he would wait for the others inside. Of course, the remaining people did not have any objections. Chapter 1206. After stepping into the transmitting formation, Xiao Chen only felt a white light flash before his eyes. Then the surrounding scenery suddenly changed and the environment immediately changed. Before Xiao Chen could take a closer look, a few whooshes sounded behind him. The people of the Jia family, Cheng Menjing, and the other girls also came in. Seeing this extremely strange environment, they were a bit confused and didn't know where to go. Fortunately, they were all teleported together so they could take care of each other. Xiao Chen looked around and realized that this was an extremely vast and empty land. Furthermore, it was shrouded in a faint mist, and the sunlight couldn't be seen clearly. He could only vaguely make out the situation a dozen or so meters away, as well as the vague outlines of mountains and forests in the distance. This scene was very similar to the foggy forest that Xiao Chen passed through when he walked from the outer martial arts world to the inner martial arts world. The difference was that the fog in this secret realm was slightly lighter, but it was still impossible to see the whole picture at a glance. Even though they were standing at a commanding position, they still couldn't find it for a while. Xiao Chen quietly spread out his divine awareness and led the group to a big tree not far away. After standing still, he carefully observed the places that he could reach with his divine awareness, and judged where to go next. Jia Muzin and the others didn't say anything. Looking at Xiao Chen with his eyes closed, they waited quietly. Now they unconsciously followed Xiao Chen's lead, and vaguely regarded him as their leader. I have a general direction. After a while Xiao Chen opened his eyes, pointed to the north and said, let's go north for the time being. There are more closed-door training points there. So far, only 2 or 3 groups of people have gone there, and they haven't found anything strange yet. Just now, Xiao Chen had explored as far as he could in the 4 directions as possible. Many groups had gone to the west and south. Although there weren't many groups in the east, ferocious beasts appeared from time to time, and the degree of danger was relatively high. Therefore Xiao Chen judged that the north was relatively safer. Hardly had Xiao Chen finished his words when a person suddenly walked out of the group and walked in another direction alone. Jia Tuyao, where are you going? Jianghu jumped in fright and hurriedly shouted, Xiao Chen already said that he's going north. Are you going to die by going south alone? The one who left was Jia Tuyao. Without even turning his head around he said, if you want to follow Xiao Chen then go ahead. He has offended so many people outside. Now there must be people waiting for an opportunity to take revenge on him. I don't want to follow him. When the time comes I will suffer an unexpected disaster. After saying that, Jia Tuyao walked further and further away. Soon he disappeared in the mist, leaving no trace behind. You. Jianghu was furious. Just as he was about to rush forward and flip out, he was stopped by Xiao Chen. Forget it, Mu Senator, if that idiot wants to leave by himself, then let him be. Anyway, his death has nothing to do with us. We don't want another piece of trash to drag us down. Xiao Chen coldly glanced at the direction where Jia Tuyao left, then turned around and said, all right, let's go now, or we might not even be able to get the rest of the closed-door cultivation sites. Jianghu hesitated for a while, then reluctantly nodded. Although he also hated Jia Tuyao, after all they were all members of the Jia family. Now that he was the young master of the Jia family, since he had brought Jia Tuyao into the secret realm, he had to shoulder the responsibility of the young master and take everyone out together. He didn't expect that Jia Tuyao would be so vengeful. As soon as he entered the secret realm, he left the team and acted alone. For the sake of the big picture, Jianghu couldn't leave the whole team to chase after him. Therefore he could only let him go. When the team was about to leave, Miss Xing suddenly stopped and said to Xiao Chen, I can't go with you. Elder Sun sent me a message, asking me to wait for him near the teleportation site. I guess he has an important task for me. Okay. Then take care of yourself. Xiao Chen nodded and lightly patted Miss Xing's shoulder. Miss Xing had mentioned this to him before. Xiao Chen could also guess that Elder Sun, that old bastard, would definitely not let this matter go. Xing Gongzi, actually, you don't have to go. Tian Sauer interrupted and said, since you are going to shed all pretense of cordiality with those people from Open Heaven sect sooner or later, why don't you take this opportunity to completely cut off your relationship with them? Just like Sister Sauer, she left just like that and didn't return for more than 10 years. Now she has directly cut off all contact with us. That's not very good. I think it's better for me to go. Miss Xing thought for a while, then shook her head and said with a smile, maybe they will think of other ways to frame Xiao Chen. When that time comes, I will be by their side and know some inside information. I can also warn you in advance. Miss Xing didn't want to go back because she couldn't bear to leave Open Heaven sect. She had long disliked the actions of her own sect. However, since her identity hadn't been exposed yet, Miss Xing wanted to use this as a cover for Xiao Chen and inquire about relevant information. That's fine too. Xiao Chen didn't object, but he still warned her with a serious expression. However, I feel that the person with the surname Sun may already be suspicious of you. If he interrogates you, you don't have to deliberately cover for me. Just tell him the truth. Say that I brought people north and leave the rest to me. Ah, this isn't appropriate, right? You guys have to be busy breaking through to the Venerable Realm and deal with the people from Open Heaven sect. I'm afraid you won't have the time to be distracted. Miss Xing frowned and said disapprovingly. Have you forgotten what Chou Wanqian said previously? Even if the people with the surname Sun find us, we will definitely be safe and sound. Xiao Chen smiled slightly. He wasn't worried at all about what Miss Xing said happening. Miss Xing was startled. She tried hard to recall what the leader of the alliance had just said. Soon she understood what Xiao Chen meant. Chou Wanqian said that there were protective measures at the seclusion site. It could allow people who were focused on breaking through to not be affected by the outside world. It was probably because of this that Xiao Chen felt at ease and dared to let her speak the truth. But, what if you guys didn't find the seclusion site, or it has already been occupied by others? Miss Xing asked worriedly. You don't have to worry about this. If the people from Open Heaven sect really dare to come, I have the confidence to make them stay here. The corner of Xiao Chen's mouth curled up, revealing a trace of a smile. The reason why Xiao Chen dared to say this was naturally not because he was speaking without thinking. He had just discovered a little secret. Even if the flame of the underworld and Little Demon didn't make a move, he could easily and happily take care of Elder Sun and the others. Seeing that Xiao Chen was so confident, Miss Xing didn't say anything else and nodded. Chapter 1207. At this moment, a few white lights flashed from the teleportation array not far away. She guessed that Elder Sun and the others had arrived, so she bid farewell to Xiao Chen and the others and walked towards the teleportation array. Xiao Chen brought Jia Muzhen, Jia Renzhong, Qing Menjing, and the others and hurriedly left towards the north. This wasn't Elder Sun's first time coming to the Venerable Realm, so he was very familiar with the environment here. He was the first to enter the teleportation array and then waited at the side. After all the disciples of the awakening sect had arrived, he began to make arrangements. Little Xing, you're here. Elder Sun had just finished making arrangements when he saw Little Xing walking towards him. Yes, I parted ways with them. Little Miss Xing nodded her head and casually replied. Elder Sun sized up Little Xing out of caution. He still asked her a few questions to test if she was being controlled. After all, after entering the secret realm, not only would they make a move, but Xiao Chen might also want to retaliate. Seeing that Little Xing answered all the questions fluently, Elder Sun dispelled the doubts in his heart. He then asked, You came in with Xiao Chen and the others, right? Did you notice any abnormalities after entering the Venerable Realm? There weren't any abnormalities. It's just that after Xiao Chen's strength dropped to the Demon King Great Perfection Realm, he became much more vigilant. Little Xing pretended to think first before answering. If that's the case, then which direction did Xiao Chen and the others go? Elder Sun glanced at her and asked. They went north. Xing last didn't hesitate this time and directly said it. Heading north? Why would they go in that direction? Are you sure you didn't see wrongly? Elder Sun pondered for a moment. He seemed to be a little dissatisfied with the direction Xiao Chen went, but he didn't directly say the reason. No. Little Xing was stunned and shook her head in surprise. She thought to herself, why am I being suspected even though I told the truth? Elder Sun, young Master Xing did not see wrongly. I also heard Xiao Chen's group heading in that direction. Just as Xing last finished speaking, a familiar voice rang out. Following that, two men broke through the fog and slowly walked over. Lady Xing turned around and saw the two men's faces. She broke out in a cold sweat. Luckily, she didn't try to trick Elder Sunday, otherwise, she would have been exposed in front of everyone. Tuyao, you go with Elder Sun and the others. I have other things to do. The two people who came over were Jia Yuto and Jia Tuyao. It was Jia Tuyao who said those words just now, and at this moment Jia Yuto was whispering to his son. It turned out that what Jia Tuyao said about Xiao Chen being hunted down was just an excuse. After Jia Tuyao had walked far away, he sneaked back to an inconspicuous corner and waited for the people from Open Heaven sect to come in. As for Jia Yuto, he waited for Xiao Chen and the others to enter the secret realm, then he sneaked into the Awakening Heaven sect's group, paid the spiritual jades and entered the secret realm. After entering the secret realm, he ran to the previously agreed place and picked up Jia Tuyao. Ever since Jia Yubian's death, Jia Huoyin, who knew nothing about the inside story and couldn't afford to help him, also fell from power. Jia Huoyin had been lying on the sickbed all day, struggling at death's door. Elder Sun had no choice but to secretly look for Jia Yubian to cooperate with him, hoping to continue the cooperation with Jia Yubian. Of course, Jia Yuto was very willing to cooperate with Open Heaven sect. Although he wanted to fight for the control of the Jia family, he had never found a suitable opportunity. In the past, Jia Yubian controlled the lifeline of the Jia family and firmly suppressed him. Even though Jia Yuto was responsible for external contacts and had a wide network of contacts, he had no chance to stand out. Now that Jia Yubian was dead, the young patriarch had become the foolish and slow-witted Jia Muzhen in Jia Yuto's eyes. Now that the Awakening Heaven sect had extended an olive branch to them, Jia Yuto naturally didn't hesitate to bring his son to join them. Although Jia Tuyao was not the heir of the Jia family, as long as he had the support of Open Heaven sect in the future, wouldn't it be a matter of time for him to take back the power of the Jia family? This time, after entering the Venerable secret territory, Jia Yuto planned to help his son ascend to the position of Venerable. In this way, when he returned to the Jia family, he would naturally be able to stand tall and have nothing to fear. If that's the case, then forget it. Elder Sun finally believed what little girl Xing had said. He raised his head to look at the sky and said, "It's getting late, we have to set off as soon as possible. First, we have to meet with the people of Open Heaven sect in the Venerable Secret Territory, and then we will go and find trouble with Xiaoqin." At this time, Jia Tuyao had already walked into the group of Open Heaven sect. Hearing Elder Sun's words, he immediately said respectfully, "With Elder Sun's perfect plan this time, even if Xiaoqin grew wings, he would not be able to escape." Elder Sun chuckled, waved his hand and led Jia Tuyao and the group of disciples towards the northeast, leaving only Jia Yuto standing there motionlessly. Young Lady Xing slowly walked at the back of the group. She wanted to see what Jia Yu wanted to do by staying here. However, under Elder Sun's repeated urging, she could only gloomily quicken her pace to catch up to Jia Yu. But before she could go far, from the corner of her eyes, she suddenly saw a few flashes of white light from the teleportation formation behind her. Little girl Xing was stunned for a moment, and subconsciously turned around to look at the teleportation formation. She was puzzled. Open Heaven sect should be the last group to enter the Venerable Secret Territory, right? Why are there still people coming in from the back? Little Xing, what are you doing? Don't stand there in a daze, hurry up and catch up with the group. The visibility here is very low, if we get separated it will be troublesome. Elder Sun turned around and saw that little girl Xing was standing there motionlessly, so he shouted loudly, "Okay, I'm coming." Little girl Xing nodded hurriedly and didn't dare to stay any longer. She hurriedly took 2 steps forward and caught up with Elder Sun in the group. When the last ray of white light flashed in the Venerable Secret Realm, Xiaoqin was leading the group forward slowly in the fog. Although Xiaoqin could rely on his powerful divine sense and mental strength to see far into the distance, the terrain of the Venerable Secret Territory was as complicated as a maze. The terrain in the Venerable Secret Territory was as complex as a maze. Apart from that, there were also some hidden fatal traps along the way. Presumably, they were set up by the people who entered the secret territory earlier. Their purpose was to frame other cultivators so that they wouldn't be able to find the seclusion point. Xiaoqin didn't walk very fast because Jia Muzhen, Qing Menjing, and the other girls' cultivation levels weren't very high. If they were suddenly attacked, it was very likely that he wouldn't be able to protect them in time, and some of them would lose their lives. Therefore he was especially careful. Apart from guarding against the sneak attacks of wild beasts, he was also constantly observing to see if there were people from other sects nearby. Chapter 1208. Along the way, Xiaoqin and the rest passed by a few seclusion spots. However, outside the seclusion spots, the disciples from the other sects who had been teleported in earlier were already fighting fiercely, causing dust to fly everywhere. The battle was extremely intense. After all, no one wanted to take unnecessary risks. Since they could find a suitable seclusion spot nearby, no one was willing to search elsewhere. Who knew if something terrifying would suddenly appear along the way? Xiaoqin casually glanced at the crowd that was fighting and attracted all sorts of vigilant gazes. He shook his head and continued to lead the group forward. There are so many people here. Even if we go and snatch, we probably won't be able to get many. Instead, it'll be a waste of energy. Why don't we walk a little further and take a look? As Xiaoqin walked, he explained to the people behind him, "If we can find a seclusion spot further away, even if it's not completely empty, I reckon the competition won't be so intense. We still have a chance to snatch it." Of course, the others did not have any objections. They obediently followed Xiaoqin and explored further away. Although everyone knew very well that the exploration process was somewhat risky, it was much better than the chaotic situation. No one wanted to stay. All they wanted was to successfully find a seclusion spot and successfully advance to the Venerable Realm. The group explored in silence for the time it took for an incense stick to burn. Although they found a few seclusion spots along the way, it was a pity that they had either been snatched by others or were abandoned and could no longer be used. Moreover, as long as they looked up, they could vaguely see a large group of people in front of them. At this rate, even if they were lucky enough to find another seclusion spot, it would definitely not be Xiaoqin and the rest's turn to pick it up. After all, there were too many wolves and not enough meat. Everyone wanted to break through to the Venerable Realm as soon as possible, so it was inevitable that there would be another round of fighting. "Husband Xiaoqin, aren't there a little too many cultivators here? Sister Sourshi didn't seem to see so many people when we were outside. Why are there suddenly more people inside? Don't tell me they snuck in?" Looking at the cluster of blurry human figures in the fog not far away, Tian Wangchuan could not help but grumble angrily. She had originally thought that it would be very easy for her to find a secluded cultivation spot after she entered. She had not expected that after searching for a long time, she could not even find a secluded cultivation spot. That's not the case. It's probably because there were a lot of people in there before. That's why it's so crowded. Xiao Qin made the correct judgment. Then what should we do? The sky is about to turn dark. If I can't find a place to go into seclusion, it will be even more difficult tomorrow. Jia Muzhen frowned slightly. Xiao Qin looked around, pointed to a small path and said, if we continue to walk along the main road, I think it will be difficult. How about this? Let's take a small detour and try to walk along the small path. Maybe we can find something new? That way I won't have to follow behind others and eat dust. Take the small path? Cheng Minjing looked at the dark fog and couldn't see anything clearly. She suddenly had a strange feeling in her heart, but she couldn't tell what it was. What's wrong, Minjing? Don't you want to take the small path? Xiao Qin saw that Cheng Minjing's expression was a little hesitant. He thought that she was afraid to take the small path, so he asked with concern. Cheng Minjing hesitated for a moment, but she still waved her hand and said, forget it. Let's do as you say. I don't want to mess with those stinky men. The others naturally did not have any objections. Since Xiao Qin was leading the team, there would definitely not be any problems. Moreover, although that small path looked a little sinister, there were indeed very few people who knew they might be able to find another way and find treasures. Stepping on the muddy and rugged remote road, Xiao Qin quickly found that there were already a lot of footprints on the ground. It seemed that someone had passed by here. However, Xiao Qin didn't care and still led everyone forward. Because according to the number of footprints, he judged that there shouldn't be many people walking in this direction. After all, everyone was scared by Chou Wanqian before, and they were not willing to take risks. They tacitly agreed that it was safer to walk along the main road. Soon Xiao Qin's proposal was fruitful. Everyone finally found an empty seclusion point. They were overjoyed and eager to try it. They all wanted to run over immediately. Wait. Just as they were getting closer and closer to the seclusion point, Xiao Qin suddenly stopped and made a silent gesture. Then he led everyone to turn around and hide in a bush. What's wrong? What happened? Cheng Minjing hurriedly asked in a low voice. However, before she could finish her question, they heard messy footsteps approaching from different directions. Everyone's expressions tensed up. They thought that it was coming for them, and they listened attentively as if they were facing a great enemy. Only then did they determine that there should be two groups of people rushing over from two different directions, and their target was this empty closed-door cultivation spot. It seemed like they wanted to come over and fight for it. After everyone concealed themselves, they quietly raised their heads and peeked through the grass. They saw a group of people dressed in gray robes coming from the east. There were about 30 people in this group, while the group of cultivators dressed in red robes to the west only had a few dozen people. In comparison, the momentum of the group at the beginning was clearly weaker. At this moment, Linger's eyes suddenly lit up. She pulled on Xiao Qin's sleeve and pointed at one of the groups. Xiao Qin, look. Those people in red robes are from our Yinyun sect. The long-haired man leading them is my senior, Fengyu Lei. I also know the people in gray robes. They are from the Six Directions sect. The old man with white hair and a ruddy complexion is called Tong Yizuan. He is an elder of their sect. Linger's small hand clutched Xiao Qin's clothes tightly. She was a little emotional. She didn't recognize the people from the Yinyun sect when she was outside. She didn't expect to meet them here. However, she didn't dare to show herself now. After all, she had secretly followed Xiao Qin here and hadn't been recognized by the sect. In other words, the sect didn't take her seriously. Don't be too nervous. Let's see what happens first. I think these two sects are going to fight. Xiao Qin raised his eyebrows and patted Linger's small hand. What? It can't be? I remember that the relationship between the Yinyun sect and the Six Directions sect is quite good. Why would they fight over a secluded cultivation spot? Aren't there a lot of secluded cultivation spots here? Linger felt that Xiao Qin's words were a little strange. What's there to be confused about? Xiao Qin laughed coldly. He looked at the situation outside and explained in a low voice, there are indeed many secluded cultivation spots in the honorable realm. However, according to the few situations we've encountered before, even sects that were originally very close to each other would fight over secluded cultivation spots. There is no reason at all. Chapter 1209. Linger was dazed for a second, but she soon understood what Xiao Qin meant. In a place where strength was everything, relationships meant nothing. Whoever was stronger would get more resources. Young friend Feng, nice to meet you. I didn't expect to see you here. At this moment the two teams had already met outside. Tong Yizhuan stroked his white beard and looked at Feng Yulei with a smile. He then said calmly, "That's right. Senior Tong, I'm really sorry. This secluded training spot was discovered by us, the Guiding Cloud School. Please find another place." Feng Yulei was a straightforward man. Although he said sorry, he didn't show it on his face at all. "Young friend Feng, you are wrong. This secluded training spot is so large that it is obviously more suitable for many people to train at the same time. Your Guiding Cloud School only has 12 people. It is such a waste to take up such a large amount of resources. Just give it to us, the Six Direction School." Tong Yizhuan said calmly with a vicious look in his eyes. Although his words were very beautiful, Tong Yizhuan's intentions were very clear. There were only 12 or so of them. Even if both sides were to fight and everyone had the strength of a king paragon, this daddy's side had more people than you. 2 of us would be enough to take on one of you. You might as well give it up obediently and save yourself some trouble. Tong Yizhuan, don't think that you are so great because you have more people. Today I will not respect the old and cherish the young. Feng Yulei snorted and stepped into the secluded training spot first. Then he waved his hand and said to the disciples behind him, "Come with me everyone. This spot belongs to the Guiding Cloud School." "Young man, it seems that you won't give up until you see the coffin." Tong Yizhuan was furious when he saw that Feng Yulei didn't take him seriously. He focused his eyes and his pupils shrank. He immediately operated his mental cultivation method and showed his cultivation. Then he waved his palm at Feng Yulei. Feng Yulei didn't expect that Tong Yizhuan would suddenly attack him. Luckily he was young and strong, and his reaction was more agile than ordinary people. He hurried to dodge, but it was still too late. His shoulder was hit by the palm wind, and the sharp pain spread rapidly. "Tong, you old fart, you actually dare to oppose our cloud drawing sect. You are simply tired of living." Being injured, Feng Yulei was completely infuriated. He opened his mouth and cursed. Holding back the pain in his shoulder, he stomped on Tong Yizhuan with his left foot and punched at his chest. "Hee brat, you are still too young to fight me." Tong Yizhuan laughed. Instead of retreating, he advanced towards Feng Yulei. When Feng Yulei's fist was about to touch Tong Yizhuan's chest, Tong Yizhuan suddenly twisted his body in a weird curve. Not only did he dodge the fatal punch, he also took the opportunity to move behind Feng Yulei and slap his back brutally. Seeing that his punch had missed, Feng Yulei knew that the situation was not good. However, he had used up all his strength and had no way to resist the palm wind behind him. All he could do was grit his teeth and take it. Bang! With a muffled sound, Feng Yulei was blown away and landed heavily on the ground. He spat out a mouthful of blood. "Little ant, you overestimate yourself." Tong Yizhuan put his hands behind his back and walked towards Feng Yulei slowly. He sneered condescendingly, "You think you can be so presumptuous in front of me just because you are a peak king? Get out of here. If it were not for Zhuo Fifen, I would have killed you long ago." The two had fought so fast that the disciples of the cloud drawing sect had just come to themselves. Seeing that their senior brother was at a disadvantage, they hurried to his side. 2 disciples helped Feng Yulei up, while the other 12 disciples surrounded Tong Yizhuan tightly. They all looked murderous, as if they were ready to fight Tong Yizhuan at any time. "Yo, you little bastards, are you tired of living just like your senior brother?" Tong Yizhuan frowned and took a step back secretly. Then he winked at the disciples of the Six Direction sect not far away. Although his actual combat experience was stronger than that of these little brats, he couldn't handle the sheer number of people on the other side. As the saying goes, even ants can bite an elephant to death. If the few of them were to fight him alone, even the old master would be beaten to death. Receiving Tong Yizhuan's signal, those disciples also rushed over. They automatically divided into groups of 2 and fixed their eyes on the disciples of the cloud drawing sect. They were ready to kill them at any time. Seeing the tension in the air between the 2 sides, as though a fight was about to break out at any moment, Linger, who was watching from the bushes, immediately grew nervous. She grabbed Xiao Chen's arm tightly and said anxiously, "Xiao Chen, can you help the people from the Yin sect? Although sect leader Zhuo was not nice to you before, senior brother Feng and the other disciples are innocent." What? Before Linger could finish her words, she suddenly felt as if her left leg had been stung by something. The pain made her lose her balance and fall to the ground. "Linger, what's wrong?" Xiao Chen was shocked and quickly helped Linger up. He lowered his head and glanced at her left leg. He discovered that there was a huge ant biting her calf firmly. Moreover, there were many large ants crawling out of the mud and climbing up her calf. Xiao Chen's expression changed slightly. He quickly shook off the ants on Ling Er's leg and rushed out of the bushes while holding her. He shouted to the others behind him, "Everyone come out quickly. There are many bullet ants here. There should be an ant nest nearby. Be careful not to get bitten." Everyone's faces turned pale when they heard this. They lowered their heads and looked at their feet. They saw countless huge ants crawling out of the mud. Some of the faster ones had already climbed up to their shoes. After hurriedly shaking off the ants on their shoes, everyone no longer cared about hiding themselves. They quickly followed behind Xiao Chen and ran to an open space not far away. Seeing that everyone had come out safe and sound, Xiao Chen condensed a fireball and threw it at the bushes they had just hidden in. Not long after, there was a crackling sound and the smell of burnt insects. Qing Menjing and the other girls covered their noses. The smell was very unpleasant. "Who is it?" Since there was a fire here, the Cloud Guide sect and the Six Directions sect naturally heard the commotion. Tong Izuan shouted and looked toward the bushes that were on fire. With one look, he immediately found traces of Xiao Chen and the others. He narrowed his eyes and said with a gloomy expression, "It seems that Elder Heaven Ancestors' luck is really good today. Not only did I successfully find a place for seclusion, but I can also end the feud between Elder Gu and Shi Yuchuan." Chapter 12:10. Since he had already been exposed, Xiao Chen didn't plan to continue watching the show. He supported Ling Er and brought a group of people over to Tong Yizun. He stared at him condescendingly and said, "Old fart, this young master has taken a fancy to this seclusion spot. Hurry up and bring your bunch of rotten potatoes and stinky eggs away. Don't stand here like idiots and block the Earth's rotation." "Ah, Xiao Chen, your tone is really big. Although I can't do anything to you outside, you still dare to be so arrogant in the venerable realm? It seems like you haven't figured out the current situation?" Tong Yizun didn't get angry when he heard Xiao Chen's threat. He thought that Xiao Chen didn't know that the venerable realm's strength was restricted, so he was talking nonsense. From Tong Yizun's point of view, Xiao Chen and the others were nothing more than a motley crew. Apart from Xiao Chen, who had the strength of a consummate martial artist and needed him to move his fingers to deal with them, the rest of them didn't even need him to lift a finger. "Oh young miss, help me support Ling Er first." Xiao Chen acted as if he didn't hear Tong Yizun's words. He turned around and carefully handed Ling Er to Qing Menjing. "Little brat, didn't you hear what I said? Do you know what restrictions this secret realm has on venerables?" Tong Yizun was a little embarrassed when he saw that Xiao Chen was ignoring him, so he immediately retorted, "What does it have to do with you whether I know or not?" Xiao Chen cursed and slowly walked over to Tong Yizun. "What do you want to do? You dare to be so arrogant in front of this old man? You will pay the price." Tong Yizun saw that Xiao Chen wasn't curious at all, so he was a little angry and said fiercely. Xiao Chen scoffed at Tong Yizun's words. After walking in front of Tong Yizun, he first used his mental power to control Tong Yizun's body. Then he raised his hand and slapped Tong Yizun. He said coldly, "I naturally have the ability to be arrogant. Since you think you've lived enough, then you can die now." Tong Yizun was indifferent at first, thinking that he could easily avoid this palm, but just as he was about to use his movement technique, he suddenly found that his body couldn't move at all. Tong Yizun, who had turned pale with fright, could only watch as Xiao Chen's palm grew bigger and bigger in front of his eyes. Accompanied by a blood-curdling screech, Tong Yizun was unable to resist Xiao Chen's slap and was sent flying more than 10 meters away. His body drew a parabola in the air and crashed heavily onto the ground, motionless. He was already deader than dead. The disciples of the Six Harmonies faction were dumbfounded. What was going on? One had to know that as an elder of the Six Directions faction, Tong Yizun's strength was second only to the faction leader. Now he was actually slapped to death by Xiao Chen. How were they supposed to play? On the other side, the disciples of the Yin Yun sect were all stunned on the spot. They were so shocked by the scene that they couldn't speak. They all felt that Xiao Chen was too outrageous. Although the palm just now looked very ordinary, Tong Yizun stood there motionlessly, unable to dodge it at all. What was going on? Fengyu Lei, who was being supported by two of his junior brothers, had a very ugly expression. It wasn't because Xiao Chen's strength was superior and had stolen his limelight. It was because he had seen the scene of Xiao Chen hugging Ling Er intimately. Fengyu Lei and Ling Er had grown up together in the sect, and he had always admired her. Now that he saw her being hugged by another man, he suddenly felt that a good cabbage had been taken by a pig. Moreover, this pig had just saved the Yin Yun sect, so he was very conflicted. For a moment the entire scene was frighteningly quiet. Xiao Chen raised his eyebrows and glared at the disciples of the Six Harmonies faction. He said impatiently, "What are you standing there for? Hurry up and get lost. Don't tell me you also want to experience the feeling of that old man flying?" Those disciples were so scared that their bodies trembled, and only then did they come back to their senses. After seeing Xiao Chen's methods, they knew that this fiend in front of them was not joking with them. They hurriedly ran over, picked up Tong Yizun's corpse, and without saying a word they ran away in fear. This great hero, thank you so much for saving the Yin Yun sect which was on the brink of destruction. I don't know how to thank you. With the help of his disciples, Fengyu Lei limped over to Xiao Chen. He took a deep breath and cupped his fists at him respectfully. "Oh, no need to thank me. It was nothing." Xiao Chen waved his hand casually and said, "All right, you can go now. I will reluctantly accept this closed-door training point. Consider it as a gift of appreciation." Xiao Chen had seen Fengyu Lei's constipated face just now. He could guess that this guy seemed to be interested in Ling Er. However, since Fengyu Lei had not done anything out of line, he did not want to expose him. As long as Fengyu Lei behaved himself and did not make any trouble, everything would be fine. The corner of Fengyu Lei's mouth twitched a bit. His heart suddenly sank. He did not expect that Xiao Chen would also want this closed-door training point. Fengyu Lei naturally did not want to give up the closed-door training point just like that. However, he did not know how to negotiate with Xiao Chen. After all, Xiao Chen had killed Tong Yizun with one move. No. To be more precise, it was a casual slap that easily killed Tong Yizun. Fengyu Lei was thinking quickly. He knew that he was not a match for Xiao Chen, but he really did not want to give up this closed-door training point. He was thinking about how to fight for it. "What are you talking about? If it wasn't for my wife Ling Er, I wouldn't even care about the life and death of your group." Xiao Chen put on a serious face and said gloomily, "Anyway, I have made my decision. Either you disappear consciously or I don't mind giving you a ride. Think about it carefully." Fengyu Lei opened his mouth, but before he could say anything he heard Qing Minjing shouting from behind, "Xiao Chen, Ling Er has fainted. Come and have a look." Xiao Chen frowned when he heard that. He immediately abandoned Fengyu Lei and turned to run over. He bent down to take Ling Er from Qing Minjing's hands and held her in his embrace. Then he injected some primordial qi into her body to check on her condition. Fengyu Lei was also startled. He limped over to Xiao Chen. He wanted to check Ling Er's condition in person, but he felt even more uncomfortable when he saw Xiao Chen hugging Ling Er so tightly. Not long after, Xiao Chen's furrowed brows relaxed a lot. Ling Er had only fainted because she had been poisoned by the bullet ants. There was not much of a problem. After finding out the cause, Xiao Chen used the pneuma to guide the poison in Ling Er's body to the wound on her calf, and then it was discharged gradually. Chapter 12:11. Xiao Chen only used his primordial qi to heal the wound after the black blood had flowed out and turned into fresh red blood. After waiting for a while, Ling Er's eyelashes trembled slightly, and she slowly woke up. "Xiao, what happened? Why did I lose consciousness all of a sudden?" Ling Er looked at Xiao Chen in confusion. She turned her head and saw Fengyu Lei standing at the side, looking at her with concern. She quickly asked, "Senior brother Feng, how are your injuries? I was almost scared to death just now." "Don't worry, junior sister Ling Er. I'm fine." Before Fengyu Lei could finish, Xiao Chen interrupted, "Oh, your senior brother is very tough. He won't die. You didn't feel anything just now because you were poisoned and fainted. You're fine now." "Poisoned? What poisoned me? Why is everyone fine and only I was poisoned?" Ling Er blinked her eyes in confusion and asked with a puzzled expression. "It's because you were bitten by an ant called the bullet ant. Normally, these ants aren't poisonous. It's possible that they've been in the secret realm for too long, so they've mutated into poisonous ants." Xiao Chen explained unhurriedly. Xiao Chen didn't know much about bullet ants at first, but he happened to watch a movie about ants on his phone a few days ago, so he happened to have some knowledge about them. "I see." Ling Er nodded, not fully understanding. Fengyu Lei was very displeased that Xiao Chen had taken the lead. However, he could only swallow his anger and didn't dare to protest because of Xiao Chen's strength. When the conversation between the two finally came to an end, Fengyu Lei quickly intervened and asked, "Junior sister Ling Er, how did you end up in the venerable mystic realm? After your master, Grandma Nanshan, learned that you were missing, she specially asked me to help investigate your whereabouts. She was worried to death after not hearing from you for so long." It's a long story. Ling Er sighed helplessly. She did not seem to want to talk about her experiences in front of Fin Yulei, so she changed the topic and said, Senior Brother Feng, when you return to the Cloud Guide sect, please tell my master Granny Nanshan that I'm doing well. Tell her not to worry too much and to take care of herself. How can we do that? You should go back and say this yourself. Feng Yulei immediately shook his head and said, if I tell her through me, Granny Nanshan will suspect that I am comforting her. But Linger was about to explain, but Feng Yulei interrupted her and suggested, how about this, when I become a venerable, we will go back to the Yin Yun sect together. After pausing for a while, Feng Yulei looked at Xiao Qin meaningfully before he added, Junior Sister Linger, you are traveling alone. What if you get tricked? What will you do? As your senior brother who grew up with you, I can't stop worrying about you either. Feng Yulei's words were obviously pointing at Xiao Qin. He felt that Xiao Qin was being nice to Linger because of her beauty. Senior Brother Feng, what do you mean by that? Linger was a smart girl. She immediately understood that Feng Yulei was implying something. Her face darkened as she said coldly, Xiao Qin is not a cheater. You don't know him, so don't speak carelessly and define him. Junior sister, you are taking it out of context. Feng Yulei was unwilling to give up and tried to explain. Linger waved her hand and said, Senior Brother Feng, you don't have to explain. Anyway, I won't be going back to the Yin Yun sect for a while. You should know the specific reason. If the leader of the Yin Yun sect, Zhuo Fifan, hadn't forced Linger to seduce Xiao Qin and steal his forging materials, and hadn't locked Granny Nanshan up, Linger would have been very willing to go back to the Yin Yun sect. After all, it was the sect she had grown up in. She still had some feelings for it. However, Zhuo Fifan's series of actions made Linger feel that he had gone too far. She couldn't accept it at all. She didn't have a good impression of the Yin Yun sect anymore. Instead, she felt much more relaxed staying by Xiao Qin's side. She didn't have to deal with so many things and she had a bunch of sisters to play with. Linger, I know you have some opinions about Leader Zhuo. But as disciples of the sect, we have to look at the big picture. How can we do whatever we want? Feng Yulei was Zhuo Fifan's direct disciple. Naturally, he wouldn't side with an outsider. Instead, he lectured Linger earnestly. Linger snorted coldly and didn't respond. Feng Yulei thought that junior sister Linger had been persuaded by him. He took a step forward and wanted to get closer. However, a figure blocked his way and didn't let him go. Feng Yulei took a closer look and saw Xiao Qin looking at him with his arms crossed and a mocking expression. Feng Yulei took a step forward angrily. He pointed at Xiao Qin and said to Linger, besides, you saw it just now. This Xiao Qin offended the Six Directions sect and even killed their elder, Tong Yizuan. The Six Directions sect will come for him sooner or later. For your safety, you better go back with me. Senior Brother Feng, you don't have to say any more. Xiao Qin is my husband. I know how he treats me. As for Zhuo Fifan, forget it. I don't want to see him again in my life. Linger was not moved at all. She said with a cold smile. What? Is this guy really your man? Feng Yulei blurted out in shock. When Xiao Qin said that Linger was his wife, Feng Yulei thought that he was just taking advantage of her verbally. He didn't expect that Linger would admit it herself. It seemed that the relationship between them was not as simple as he thought. Could it be that they had developed feelings for each other after hitting the home run? Are you done with your *T? If I weren't Linger's husband, how could I be so intimate with her? Xiao Qin, who had been silent, countered impatiently. He could see that Feng Yulei was not going to give up. But Feng Yulei stuttered for a long time, but he didn't know what he was trying to say. Xiao Qin didn't care what he wanted to say. He waved his hand and said coldly, before I change my mind, you and your people from the Yin Cloud sect should disappear from my sight. Otherwise, I won't be polite anymore. Feng Yulei was so angry that he clenched his teeth. However, the scene where Xiao Qin killed Tong Yizuan with a slap was still vivid in his mind. He really didn't have the courage to confront Xiao Qin. You what? Are you stuttering? Do you need me to check it for you? Xiao Qin clenched his fists so hard that they made cracking sounds. He approached Feng Yulei slowly and said with a weird smile. Chapter 12:12. In fact, Xiao Qin was just putting on a show. Linger would never agree to deal with Feng Yulei like how he killed Tong Yizuan. However, it seemed that it was enough. Feng Yulei shut his mouth immediately and glared at Xiao Qin. Then he left with the people of the Yin Cloud sect without saying a word. Xiao Qin, was I too heartless? After all, Feng Yulei is my senior brother of the same sect. Linger sighed and said in a low voice as she watched Fenyu Lei leave angrily. Sister Linger, don't be silly. Zhuo brought this upon himself. It has nothing to do with you. Ling Qinxue walked over and squatted down to stroke Linger's hair. She comforted her in a soft voice. Really? Linger, the cheerful and proud Linger, looked at Ling Qinxue helplessly like a lost child. Of course it's true. You still don't believe what I said? Ling Qinxue nodded seriously. Now that Zhuo can order you around as a tool for the interests of himself and his sect, you don't have to feel too guilty. Learn from me and be more open-minded. Linger suddenly remembered that Ling Qinxue was indeed the most qualified person to say these words. Because she was also used as a tool by the Cherry Blossom Group and was rescued by Xiaoqin in the end. Well, since the problem has been solved, let's not think too much about it. You guys should go into the secluded training room to practice. I'll stand guard outside and protect you. Xiaoqin clapped his hands and said with a smile. Linger took a deep breath and nodded. When she was about to stand up, Xiaoqin suddenly bent down and kissed her on the cheek in front of everyone. Linger was shocked. She blushed and didn't dare to raise her head. She felt that her friends around her were laughing at her. Xiaoqin shook his head. He carefully helped Linger up and sent her into the seclusion room. Although she was still a little shy, she felt much better after being kissed by Xiaoqin. After entering the seclusion area, she sat down with her legs crossed and eliminated the distracting thoughts in her mind. She began to circulate the sect's mental cultivation technique to focus on breaking through to the martial supremacy realm. The others didn't say much. They all walked into the seclusion area and sat down to cultivate. Xiaoqin, on the other hand, stayed outside the seclusion area and observed his surroundings. Although Chou Wanxian had said that the seclusion site had corresponding protection measures, Xiaoqin did not know if they were effective. After all, several seclusion sites had failed before. Therefore, Xiaoqin was still worried and decided to personally protect everyone. On the other side, Fenyu Lei had a belly full of anger. He led his subordinates to find a few more secluded training spots. However, some of them had already been occupied by people from other sects, and some of them were useless. They could not find a suitable one even after a long time. Helplessly, Fenyu Lei could only return to the main road to explore. However, he was really lucky today. He actually found an effective seclusion site in a secluded corner by the road. Fenyu Lei was overjoyed. However, before he could step into the seclusion site, he saw a large group of people rushing toward him. Holy *T. I'm so unlucky today. Fenyu Lei cursed inwardly. He commanded his disciples to rush toward the seclusion site. Stop. Brat, don't go in. The leading old man naturally saw Fenyu Lei and the others. He instantly determined that Fenyu Lei was the leader of this group. Therefore, he used his body movement skill to rush over and stop Fenyu Lei outside the seclusion site. What do you want? Fenyu Lei was secretly surprised. This old man's body movement skill was too fast. However, he soon recognized that the old man in front of him was elder son of the awakening sect. And the young man behind him was the young master of the Tang family, Tang Qianling. Fenyu Lei was a little puzzled. One of them belonged to the righteous path, while the other belonged to the demonic path. How did they end up together? Before he could figure it out, elder son took out a portrait and asked, pointing at the man in it, Brat, have you seen this man before? This. Fenyu Lei glanced at the portrait and found it familiar. After a closer look, he thought to himself, Holy *T. Isn't the man in the portrait Xiaoqin? What's going on? Could it be that Xiaoqin had offended the awakening sect in the Tang family besides the Six Harmony sect? What this and that? Don't dawdle. If you know something, just say it. Elder son frowned and was about to lose his temper. I saw this man just now. He was in the forest on that path just now. It seems he is preparing to make a seclusion. Fenyu Lei rolled his eyes and pointed at the path they came from. Oh, that's all. Go back to your seclusion. Elder son's face lit up. He winked at Tang Qianling and said nothing more. The two of them left quickly with their subordinates. They were worried that after Xiaoqin entered the seclusion spot, the protective measures would be activated. Therefore, they didn't dare to linger. They wanted to find Xiaoqin as soon as possible. Fenyu Lei let out a long sigh of relief when he saw the group of people running away. Since the awakening sect and the Tang family weren't here to fight for the seclusion spot, it didn't matter anymore. He could just focus on his seclusion. In any case, he could not be bothered to find out why Xiaoqin had provoked these ruthless people. Could it be that after these people got rid of Xiaoqin, Ling Er would obediently follow him back to the Yin Yun sect? Little Miss Xing worriedly followed behind elder son and Tang Qianling. She originally thought that they wouldn't be able to find Xiao Chen's tracks so quickly. That way Xiao Chen and Tang Qianling would be able to stall for a while longer. If Xiao Chen could find a seclusion spot during this time, he could at least wait until Jia Muzhen, Cheng Menjing and the other women broke through to the Venerable Realm. In this way Xiao Chen would have a few more helpers when dealing with the awakening sect. In the end, Xiao Chen's whereabouts were already exposed in less than a day. What should they do? However, Xiao Chen's side did not care about being ambushed, because they had already encountered an even more troublesome problem. It was worth noting that everyone had to resist the pressure emitted by the Venerable One's origin force during their seclusion in order to successfully advance. However, it was usually very difficult for an ordinary cultivator to resist this kind of pressure. This was also the reason why many people couldn't smoothly advance even after coming to the Venerable Realm. These people often couldn't withstand the pressure and would fall at the threshold of the door, ultimately failing at the last step. Xiao Chen's group also encountered the same problem. Because everyone's strength was uneven, they were all relatively weak. None of them had reached the Great Perfection Monarch realm, so they couldn't withstand the pressure of a Venerable's origin power at all. Cheng Menjing and the other women were fine. They often cultivated with Xiao Chen, so their bodies were full of aura. Basically, they had already reached the King realm, so they could barely resist the pressure. Chapter 12-13. Jia Muzhen and Jia Renzhong, on the other hand, were in a more tragic situation. Both of them were only martial generals. After being oppressed by the ancient aura for a few times, their internal organs were damaged, and their qi and blood flowed in the opposite direction. They almost vomited blood and died in the seclusion area. Fortunately, Xiao Chen discovered them in time and healed them, saving their lives. Otherwise, it would have been a disaster. Xiao Chen, I don't think we can go on like this. Jia Muzhen adjusted his breathing for a while, and his face gradually regained some color. He shook his head and said helplessly, "Unless we can break through to the full circle King realm, we definitely won't be able to withstand such a powerful pressure. We will die sooner or later." Jia Renzhong nodded with a pale face. He had also been tortured terribly by the Venerable One's origin power. Fortunately, he had brought some high-grade healing pills with him, and with Xiao Chen's key healing in time, he barely managed to stay alive. However, it took a long time for him to recover. "I know that, but we don't have time to wait for you to advance to the full circle King realm. It seems that we can only find other ways to break through to the Venerable realm." Xiao Chen frowned and murmured. Xiao Chen had a way to help Cheng Menjing and the others advance quickly. That was to use the Venerable's origin force in the seclusion area, and then do dual cultivation with them. Based on Xiao Chen's judgment of the strength of the origin force in this seclusion area, he estimated that it wouldn't take long for the girls to successfully break through, and the problem would be solved. But, what about Jia Muzhen and Jia Renzhong? He couldn't possibly let them join in, right? After all, when they were doing dual cultivation they weren't wearing clothes. Not to mention that he couldn't agree to it, these girls would definitely not agree to it. "Elder Heaven Ancestor, do you know of any way to let people advance quickly?" Xiao Chen was really at his wit's end this time, so he simply asked in his mind. Instead of sitting there and letting his imagination run wild, he might as well ask the encyclopedia, the Elder Heaven Ancestor. Of course, dual cultivation. Elder Heaven Ancestor said matter-of-factly. Pfft. Xiao Chen almost spat. Wasn't that the same as not saying anything? Xiao Chen thought that the Elder Heaven Ancestor was joking, so he could only patiently ask, "I also know that dual cultivation can level up, but how am I supposed to find two girls to accompany Jia Muzhen and Jia Renzhong in dual cultivation? Besides, even if they come, they might not agree." "Who told you that dual cultivation can only be carried out by a man and a woman?" Elder Sky rolled his eyes and snappily said, "Even if it's two men, they can still dual cultivate. It's just that the efficiency will be slower, and it won't be as smooth as yin-yang dual cultivation." Holy shit. Elder Heaven Ancestor, your taste is too heavy. Don't tell me that you want me and Jia Muzhen to become two white pigs and then undergo dual cultivation? I'm not gay and this scene is too indecent. Xiao Chen couldn't help but shiver and couldn't help but complain. He was a standard straight man, and he didn't dare to imagine the scene of two men naked, let alone one of them being him. It was simply too intoxicating. Are you stupid or not? Don't you want Jia Muzhen and Jia Renzhong to dual cultivate? Moreover, when two men dual cultivate they don't need to take off their clothes. Because the cultivation progress is relatively slow, the damage caused isn't that strong, and the clothes won't be shattered in the process of breaking through. Elder Heaven Ancestor was a little speechless at Xiao Chen's description, and helplessly explained, "Besides, it's not a big deal even if the two of them are shattered." "Oh, so that's how it is, I understand." Xiao Chen was suddenly enlightened and secretly nodded. However, when he imagined the scene of Jia Muzhen and Jia Renzhong dual cultivating, he still felt a little strange and his heart was very uncomfortable. Now that the problem was solved, the next step was to immediately start the dual cultivation. However, before Xiao Chen could fully reveal his plan to Jia Muzhen and Cheng Menjing, his divine sense suddenly sensed a group of people coming from afar. "Ah, Xiao Chen, I finally caught you." A long laugh came from afar and a familiar voice was getting closer and closer. "I didn't expect you to be hiding in such a remote place. If it wasn't for this old man's good luck, it's very likely that I would have let you escape." As Elder Sun shouted, he took the lead and rushed to the front of the group. He was afraid that Xiao Chen and the others would take advantage of the chaos to escape if they started fighting, so he quickly blocked their path of retreat. Then he made a few changing hand gestures to the disciples of Awakening Heaven sect. Those disciples received Elder Sun's secret signal, and immediately formed a circle, separating Xiao Chen, Jia Muzhen, and the others, in order to prevent them from supporting each other and helping Xiao Chen escape. Tang Qianling arrived with the disciples of the Tang family, and he was not in a hurry to make a move. He just stood outside Awakening Heaven sect and watched the battle. In his opinion, just these people of Awakening Heaven sect were enough to deal with Xiao Chen. "Hee Xiao Chen, ah Xiao Chen, you know that you can only exert the strength of a king's great perfection in this place, but you still shamelessly came to die. You're really stupid." Tang Qianling stood far away and sneered insolently, "Today even if you grow a pair of wings, you won't be able to fly out of our encirclement. Don't make any unnecessary resistance and obediently wait for your death. Maybe if I'm in a good mood I'll leave your corpse intact." Other than Elder Sun, Tang Qianling and the team they led, there were two other people walking at the back. They were Miss Xing and Jia Tuyao. At this moment, when the two of them saw Xiao Chen being surrounded, their expressions were as different as night and day. Miss Xing looked a little worried that Xiao Chen would be outnumbered, and kept thinking about how to help him out of this predicament. Jia Tuyao, on the other hand, looked like he was watching a play with great interest, fantasizing about how he would take over the Jia family after Xiao Chen, Jia Muzhen, and the others were killed, and then naturally become the successor of the Jia family. Regarding Jia Tuyao's betrayal, Xiao Chen didn't feel strange at all, because he had already expected it. However, Jia Muzhen was extremely angry. He suddenly stood up, pointed at Jia Tuyao and yelled, "Jia Tuyao! Grandpa has always been good to you, but I didn't expect that you would join hands with outsiders to deal with us. You've done such a treacherous thing, deserting all your friends and family. Aren't you afraid of being struck by lightning?" "Oh, I'm so scared. If you're so capable, let the lightning strike me." The corners of Jia Tuyao's mouth hooked up and he said in a strange tone, "Don't worry, after you die my father and I will go back to the Jia family and kill that old bastard. At that time, the position of the Jia family's master will naturally fall on my head, and you, a bastard, will only deserve to be buried in this desolate place." Chapter 12-14. Hearing this, Jia Muzhen couldn't help but tremble in anger. He wished he could fly over and slap Jia Tuyao to death. However, he also knew that the current situation didn't allow him to act recklessly. Even if the people of Open Heaven sect could turn a blind eye to his actions, Jia Tuyao was still more powerful than him, and it would be bad if he affected Xiao Chen's side. Alright, you reminded me." Xiao Chen suddenly patted his forehead and interrupted. "Reminded of what?" Jia Tuyao was a bit confused. "This kid is trapped in a tight encirclement. Why does he still have time to care about me? Why is he so open-minded? I've been cultivating for so long, but I haven't tried the Thunderball magic yet." Leisurely snapping his fingers, Xiao Chen operated his power and condensed a crackling thunderbolt ball in his hand. Then he waved his hand and threw it towards Jia Tuyao while adding, "Since you want to be struck by thunderbolts so much, I'll fulfill your little wish today. Don't thank me, it's just a piece of cake for me." "What? Ah." Jia Tuyao only managed to say 2 words before he saw a dark blue thunderball rise from Xiao Chen's hand and fly straight towards him. It didn't meet any obstacle during its flight, and lightly landed on his body. Within the span of one breath, Jia Tuyao's entire body was shrouded in thunder and lightning. He couldn't help but tremble violently like a sieve. Painful screams echoed in the jungle. However, it was the first time for Xiao Chen to condense a thunderball magic, so he wasn't proficient in it yet. Therefore it didn't cause direct harm like fireballs or ice balls. Instead, it gradually eroded Jia Tuyao's skin and flesh. Although it couldn't kill Jia Tuyao with one strike, this kind of continuous harm made Jia Tuyao feel even more pain. The pain caused by the electric current shuttling through his body was beyond anyone's imagination. Wow wow wow. Xiaochen, my husband, you're so awesome. I sour admire you so much. Seeing Jia Tuyao twisting his body and waving his arms, Tian Soran excitedly shouted, Ha, look. Even Jia Tuyao's bones have been electrocuted out. It's just like a scene in a cartoon. My man is so awesome. The others on the scene weren't as happy as Tian Wangchuan, especially the few Tang family disciples who stood closest to Jia Tuyao. They were afraid that they might be harmed by the thunderbolts, so they hurriedly ran away. Fortunately, this time Xiao Chen's thunderball magic didn't last too long. Not long after that, the last bolt of lightning disappeared from Jia Tuyao's body. Jia Tuyao's entire body was charred black, and after he stopped shaking, he fell straight backwards and thudded against the ground. His eyes were tightly closed and his arms and legs were twitching from time to time. No one knew whether he was still alive or not. The thunderball spell is quite fun. Xiao Chen nodded satisfactorily. He condensed another 2 thunderballs in his hands, turned around, glanced at Elder Sun smilingly and said in an extremely gentle tone, Little son, do you want to do an electrotherapy for yourself? I'm sure you'll be left with endless aftertaste, and instantly become dozens of years younger. For the sake of our good relationship, I'll do it for you for free. Looking at the thunderballs in Xiao Chen's hands, Elder Sun couldn't help but tremble and take a small step back. In order not to let Xiao Chen see the fear in his heart, Elder Sun took a deep breath, plucked up his courage and said, Xiao Chen, you're only at the peak of the Devil King level. Even if you can perform some strange magic, so what? Your devil energy will run out sooner or later, and that will be the time of your death. Since you're so confident, you can give it a try. Xiao Chen didn't mind. He said with a smile, Actually, I'm also quite curious. Will I run out of devil energy first, or will you be electrocuted until your bones are out? As soon as he said that, Xiao Chen immediately waved his hands outward. 2 thunder balls flew out from his hands, whistling toward Elder Sun and another awakening sect's disciple. Motherf ***. Elder Sun cursed in his heart. Naturally, he didn't dare to take the thunderball spell head-on. Seeing that, he quickly took a step back and reached out to drag the awakening sect's disciple who was standing on the side to block in front of him, taking the thunderball for him. The 2 awakening sect's disciples didn't have the ability to dodge, and they were both hit by the thunderballs. They screamed and trembled like they were electrocuted. This time, Xiao Chen injected more essence energy into the thunderball spell. The 2 of them didn't last long before their bodies were already emitting black smoke from the electric shock. Their eyes rolled back and it looked like they were about to die. Elder Sun saw that the surrounding disciples were cowering in fear from Xiao Chen's few thunderballs and immediately knew that something was wrong. If they were to let Xiao Chen continue playing around like this, his side's morale would be dispirited. All of you charge forward and dodge those thunderballs. Find an opportunity to kill this little bastard. Elder Sun made a prompt decision and immediately shouted. He directed the awakening sect's disciples to attack Xiao Chen while he hid to the side, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Those disciples were originally quite afraid of Xiao Chen's thunderball spell. However, when they heard Elder Sun's guidance, they suddenly recalled that the 3 thunderballs from before, Xiao Chen took a longer time to condense them. Furthermore, the speed at which the condensed thunderballs flew wasn't fast. With so many people on their side, it should be easy to dodge. With this thought, the group of disciples mustered their courage and charged forward with a roar. Elder Sun watched from the side. He wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to sneak an attack on Xiao Chen. However, just as his body moved, another thunderball came at him. He didn't dare to take it head-on and could only dodge to the side helplessly. As Xiao Chen's proficiency continued to increase, the time it took for Xiao Chen to condense the thunderball technique became shorter and shorter. His power and speed also continued to increase. Those awakening Heaven Gate disciples who were still harboring hope finally felt a little afraid when they saw wave after wave of people charging forward and falling one after another. They saw that the number of people charging forward decreased. They looked at each other and everyone was secretly retreating. The space around Xiao Chen also increased. Seeing the charred corpses all over the ground, Elder Sun realized the seriousness of the problem. In order to prevent unnecessary casualties, he immediately got the awakening sect disciples to stop attacking. When the disciples who were hesitating heard this, they immediately stopped and scattered far away. Jianghu, Qing Menjing, and the other women were a little worried at first. They thought that Xiaochen would be outnumbered. They were ready to leave the seclusion area and come out to help. But before they could walk out of the seclusion area, they saw the awakening sect disciples fall one after another like wheat being cut. It seemed that they didn't need to help anymore, so they stopped. Chapter 12:15. Why are all of you hiding? Continue sending people over for me to kill. My electric ball skill points are almost full. Seeing that the last 2 electric balls had missed, Xiaochen furrowed his brows in dissatisfaction and protested. Elder Son almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Do you think you're playing a game? You want to farm skill points? Do you think we're monsters for you to level up? Boring, I'll pick my own. Xiaochen pursed his lips and congealed another 2 electric balls. He suddenly turned around and threw them towards Tang Qianling's position. F***CK. Tang Qianling jumped in fright and cursed as he dodged one of the electric balls. However, the other electric ball was coming from a tricky angle and was extremely fast. It was too late for him to dodge it. In a moment of desperation, he could only pull a Tang family disciple over and use him as a shield. Boom! The ball of lightning smashed into the Tang family disciple's body. He didn't even have the time to cry out. He trembled violently a few times before falling to the ground. White smoke rose from his body and he lay there unmoving. Clearly he was already a corpse. What's going on? It's over? Xiaochen looked around at the trembling enemies and stretched lazily. Xiaochen, I haven't even finished warming up. Don't hide, come out and continue playing. Don't you think it's not exciting enough? Alright, let me show you some real strength. Xiaochen did not want to waste any more time. His body trembled slightly and he displayed the strength of a level 2 original infant stage cultivator. He then waved at Tang Qianling and Elder Son who were hiding far away. What? You actually have the strength of a martial honorable? How is that possible? Elder Son thought that his eyes were playing tricks on him. He rubbed his eyes and realized that they were still the same. He could not help but be extremely shocked and his mouth could not close. Tang Qianling was also extremely shocked. Didn't everyone say that after entering the honorable realm, everyone's cultivation would be suppressed to the full circle martial honorable realm? The Xiaochen. How the hell is he not affected at all? Was he a monster? Oh, I forgot to tell you guys. I Xiaochen am an amazing ability user. I won't be restricted by this hidden territory at all. Xiaochen shrugged and said casually. Arcanist? What the hell was that? How come he had never heard anyone mention it before? You're a saint? Elder Son and Tang Qianling both had a belly full of questions. Elder Son suddenly thought of something. Could it be that the Saint Seiya technique that little last Xing told him about last time was the technique that allowed Xiaochen to not be suppressed by the secret realm? Xiaochen looked coldly at the 2 dumbfounded fellows and said indifferently, Are you 2 idiots standing there like statues? Were they still going to fight? If you want to fight, then hurry up. If you don't want to fight, then take your subordinates and scram. My wives are getting ready to break through. I'm going to clear the place. Tang Qianling and Elder Son's minds raced. They looked at each other and saw the fear in each other's eyes. They were only at the full circle king realm. Even if they joined forces, they would not be able to deal with Xiaochen. After all, the difference in strength between an honorable and a king was obvious. Even if they included their subordinates, they would not be able to fight against Xiaochen head-on. They would only be cannon fodder if they went. So, Hero Xiao, we know we were wrong. You and your wives can focus on your cultivation. We'll leave now right away. Elder Son said weakly. Turning around, Elder Son secretly gave Xing Las a look, indicating for her to stay and observe Xiaochen's movements. He, on the other hand, led the disciples of Awakening Heaven sect and hurriedly fled. In a few breaths' time, only their silhouettes could be seen in the distance. But, Hero Xiao, please continue. We'll also leave he. Tang Qianling also smiled and retreated with small steps. Tang Qianling was not a fool. Since Awakening Heaven sect could not do anything to Xiaochen, he naturally would not stay here and wait for death. So what if he mastered the 5 poisons secret manual? Right now the 2 sides were not on the same level. There was no need to throw away his life for nothing. It was better to obediently admit defeat. Wait. Before Tang Qianling could run far, Xiaochen's figure flashed and appeared in front of him. He pointed at the corpses on the ground and said, Since you're ready to leave, then take all this trash with you. It's an eyesore to me and it will also affect my wife's mood when she cultivates. Okay. Tang Qianling did not dare to refuse at this moment. He nodded his head quickly and immediately ordered the disciples of the Tang clan to move all the corpses on the ground. Then he gave Xiaoqin a smile that was uglier than his father's death and quickly fled the scene. After everyone disappeared into the fog, Xing Las finally let out a big sigh of relief. She walked toward Xiaoqin and said with a face full of hidden bitterness, "Xiaoqin, you already knew that you were not restricted by the Honorable Realm's secret realm, right? Why didn't you tell me earlier? Really, I was worried about you, for half a day. I was thinking about how to pass the message to you. I already told you, you just didn't listen carefully." Xiaoqin spread out his hands and said innocently, "If I didn't have full confidence in dealing with them, why would I let you tell the truth and pass the message that I'm heading north? You're always so mysterious. Who knows what you mean by saying that? I thought you would choose to change your route halfway." Xing Las rolled her eyes and said unhappily, Diske, you can't even think of such a simple thing? It seems like you're not much smarter than Elder Sun and the rest." Xiaoqin shook his head and joked. Xing Las wrinkled her nose and protested, "What nonsense are you talking about? I'm much smarter than Elder Sun. Otherwise, why would he be fooled by me?" All right, I know you're good." Xiaoqin patted Xing Las's head and did not want to argue with her anymore. He pulled her to the seclusion area and called the others over to form a circle. Xiaoqin stood in the middle of the circle and said unhurriedly, "Since the problem has been solved and Xing Las has arrived, let's officially start breaking through to the Honorable Realm. However, this time we'll change the method. Instead of you doing it alone, we'll use the method of dual cultivation." "Ah, dual cultivation here? Then wouldn't Sister Sour be seen by everyone?" Before Xiaoqin could finish speaking, Tian Sour exclaimed in surprise. She covered her mouth and grumbled to herself. Normally, Tian Suruan did not reject the idea of taking off her clothes and engaging in dual cultivation with everyone in the Jia family's room. In fact, she was very passionate about it. However, in a public place like this, no matter how unrestrained she was unable to reach the state of being completely focused. Chapter 12:16. Actually, Xiaoqin was interrupted by Cheng Minjing before he could finish his sentence. That's right. Xiaoqin, what kind of stupid idea did you come up with? I'm not going to take off my clothes in public. I've already rejected this method. Hurry up and think of another way." Cheng Minjing glared at Xiaoqin, put her hands on her hips and shouted angrily. "That." Xiaoqin tried to explain, but was interrupted by Tang. "Xiaoqin, I think I should be able to break through by myself. Actually, I almost succeeded just now. It seems like I'm just a breath away. If I work hard, I'll be able to become a venerable expert. Why don't you let me try again by myself?" Tang's expression was a bit unnatural. Although she had always been carefree like a tomboy, this matter was still a bit hard for her to accept. Moreover, Tang was originally in the half-step venerable realm. Previously, when she was cultivating in the seclusion area, she indeed felt that she had touched the barrier of breaking through to the venerable realm. However, in the end, she was still unable to resist the powerful pressure, which caused all her previous efforts to go to waste. Ling Er and Ling Qianxue looked at each other. Obviously, they also found it hard to accept the idea of dual cultivation in the wild. However, they did not express it directly. They only smiled bitterly and shook their heads in unison, clearly showing their resistance. Chick Xing stood at the side, looking like she wanted to say something, but in the end she did not say anything. "That. Xiaoqin, I think what Cheng Minjing and the others said is quite reasonable. Moreover, it's already so late. Where can we find 2 girls to dual cultivate with me and everyone else? We can't." Jianghu shut his mouth and looked at Cheng Minjing and the others. He touched his nose embarrassedly and looked at Xiaoqin saying, "Why don't you think of another way?" "It's like this." Xiaoqin was about to speak for the 3rd time, but Tian Wangshuo immediately interrupted. "Tisk, Four Eyes, look at your dirty thoughts. What kind of good things are you thinking about? Who wants to dual cultivate with you? I'm only willing to perform dual cultivation with my husband, Xiaoqin. I won't accept any other man. No matter how much they offered, they wouldn't accept. I'm a girl with principles." "That's not what I meant, I mean." Jianghu's face immediately turned red, and he waved his hands repeatedly. Just as he was about to explain, he heard Xiaoqin roar, "All of you stop talking, listen to me." Everyone immediately stopped talking and looked at Xiaoqin in unison. You guys, you keep talking. Are you going to let me speak? Xiao Qin rolled his eyes at everyone. All right, don't interrupt me this time. Listen to what I have to say. Seeing that everyone finally quieted down, Xiao Qin patiently repeated what the Elder Heaven Ancestor had said to them before, and then said, so, as long as you use the Venerable Origin Force to improve your cultivation, and then use the method of dual cultivation to bear the coercion together, you can successfully break through to the strength of the Venerable Realm. Since the Venerable Origin Force of the seclusion site was determined by the number of people who entered, and regardless of the strength of the people who entered, they would all be treated as if they were in the King Realm. Therefore, when the Origin Force was transformed into coercion, everyone had to bear the same pressure. However, people with high strength like Tang Tang had a high tolerance for coercion, while people like Jianghu could not bear it. With Xiao Chen's cultivation at the peak of the second level of the nascent soul stage, it was easy for him to bear a few more layers of coercion. Even if the coercion of everyone present was to be borne by Xiao Chen alone, it would not be a big problem for a cultivator like him. Originally, Cheng Minjing, who was also a cultivator, could also easily break through, but her mental cultivation method seemed to be a little different from Xiao Chen's, plus there was a gap between her strength and the nascent soul stage, so she failed just now. No way. You want me to dual cultivate with two men, Renzhong? Will this really work? Jiao Muzhen asked with a stutter. He turned his head to look at Jiao Renzhong and found that he was also looking away with an awkward face. It could be seen that the two of them had the same idea. Dual cultivation had always been between a man and a woman, and they had never heard of two men performing it. Jiao Muzhen and Jiao Renzhong always felt that it was a little strange to dual cultivate like this. After all, both of them were men with normal sexual orientations, and they did not have any homosexual interests, so it was inevitable that they would feel uncomfortable. Tian Suruan, on the other hand, was a little gloating. Thinking back to the gay manga she had read before, she could not help but laugh and could not help but tease. Ha! For I, Sister Suruan, according to my experience of reading manga, I guess after you and Jiao Renzhong perform dual cultivation, you may lose interest in women, and the two of you can directly fly together. Jiao Muzhen's face turned pale, and he looked at Xiao Chen with some fear. If it was really like what Tian Suruan said, then he would rather be suffocated by the coercion than choose dual cultivation. Mu Sun, human crowd, don't listen to Sour's nonsense. She's just weird and doesn't look like she's serious at all. Xiao Chen also saw the awkwardness of Jiao Muzhen and Jiao Renzhong, so he gently knocked on Tian Suruan's head and explained. Hero Xiao Chen, are you sure there won't be any problems with this dual cultivation? Jiao Renzhong asked weakly. Xiao Chen said seriously, although I have not personally tested it, I have never heard of any problems. Besides, this is the only way for you to break through to the Venerable Realm as soon as possible. You should weigh the pros and cons yourself. Alright. In order to become a venerable expert, Jiao Muzhen could only go all out. Anyway, dual cultivation did not require him to take off his clothes, so there was nothing embarrassing about it. Since Jiao Muzhen had no objections, Jiao Renzhong could only nod in agreement. Although he was still a little conflicted, he quickly calmed down when he thought that he could not be a burden to the team. But, in broad daylight, are we really going to take off our clothes? Cheng Minjing was still a little hesitant. She had never thought about dual cultivation in the wild. Even if Jiao Muzhen and the others were far away from her, what if someone passed by the seclusion site? Didn't they already see everything? Although when the seclusion site was opened, defensive measures would automatically be activated, it was only a defensive formation. Other than resisting the invasion of outsiders, it had no other purpose. Anyone who passed by the seclusion site would be able to clearly see the situation inside. Don't worry, in order to prevent the naked body from being exposed, I will set up an illusion. I will not let others see the real situation. Xiao Chen patted Cheng Minjing's head comfortingly, then waved his hand and said, Is there any problem, everyone? Then let's start immediately. Chapter 12-17. After Jiao Muzhen and the Jiao Renzhong walked to the side and sat down, Xiao Chen first set up an illusion barrier for them and then set up a barrier for himself. The barrier that Xiao Chen set up could not only defend against normal attacks, but it also added another layer of protection to the defensive formation of the seclusion location. Furthermore, it could create illusions to prevent outsiders from seeing what was going on inside. It was as if everyone was dual cultivating in the room and did not have to worry about being seen at all. With this, the women finally felt a lot more at ease. One by one, they began to take off their clothes and sat down cross-legged, preparing to dual cultivate with Xiao Chen. Xing Gongzi, why aren't you taking off your clothes? Why are you sitting there in a daze? Xiao Chen also took off his jacket and placed it to the side. Just as he was about to sit down, he turned to look at Xing Gongzi, who was still fully clothed and sitting alone. He couldn't help but ask in bewilderment. Xing Gongzi's expression was a little bashful as she stammered, That Xiao Chen, why don't you set up a separate barrier for me? I can break through by myself. I'm not used to being with you guys. Just now, she had watched as the clothes on the surrounding women gradually decreased. She had a very subtle and strange feeling in her heart. She also knew how to dual cultivate, but she never thought that she would actually have to dual cultivate with Xiao Chen. From Xing Gongzi's point of view, although her relationship with Xiao Chen was not bad, it wasn't close to this stage. Therefore, there was a barrier in her heart that was a little difficult to cross. Xing Gongzi didn't even know how to take the first step. Right now, she didn't even have the courage to unbutton her clothes. She could only watch as the women very naturally took off their clothes and prepared to dual cultivate. Little Xing Gongzi, sooner or later, you will be husband Xiao Chen's woman. Why bother with these small details? There's not much difference between a step earlier or a step later. Tian Shaoring teased with a smile. No. Xing Gongzi shook her head in embarrassment. Her face was as red as an apple. She didn't know how to explain herself. Tian Shaoring chuckled as he quietly stood up and walked over. He hugged Xing's waist from behind, his hands continuously moving upwards as he exclaimed in surprise, Wah. I really couldn't tell, Xing, you're actually quite capable. She wasn't much younger than Sister Sourly, and was even stronger than Sister Menjing. TSK, and the feeling is quite good. It must be because you often exercise. Sour, what are you doing? Miss Xing was completely shocked and almost jumped up. She hurriedly stopped Tian Suruan's perverted hands from kneading her. Her face was red as she dodged to the side. She wished that there was a hole in the ground that she could crawl into. Sour, stop messing around. What does it have to do with you that Xing Gongzi is willing to break through on his own? Come back and sit properly. Cheng Minjing hurriedly walked over and tugged on Tian Shaoring's ear. As she pulled her back, she lectured her. Then she sneaked a few glances at Xing's figure. Can't you see anything? How is he stronger than me? Ouch. Sister Mengying, stop pulling, Sister Soursur's ears are going to fall off. Tian Sour stumbled back, covering his ears as he yelled while grimacing in pain. It's fine. Since you think you can break through on your own, then I won't force you. Xiao Chen understood Miss Xing's thoughts and didn't want to force her. Yes, I can do it. Miss Xing nodded her head. Her eyes darted around, but she didn't dare to look at Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen smiled helplessly and said gently to Miss Xing, However, I still have to warn you in advance. If you meet with any problems during your breakthrough, you have to come over and dual cultivate with us. Don't force yourself. Otherwise, I won't be able to divert my attention to save you. Do you understand? I understand, Miss Xing said in a low voice. Then she walked to the corner and sat down cross-legged with her back facing Xiao Chen and the others. She closed her eyes and began to channel her mind to focus on the breakthrough. Xiao Chen looked at Miss Xing's back and shook his head secretly. He felt that this girl was quite stubborn, but he didn't say much. He quickly took off the rest of his clothes and came to Cheng Minjing and the others. He entered the dual cultivation state with them. With the activation of the protection array of the retreat point, a pure aura of heaven and earth quickly spread in the retreat point, but it was followed by a suffocating pressure. Everyone in the retreat point had a change in expression. Xiao Chen's side was fine. The women were just a little uncomfortable at first. Later, with Xiao Chen's help, their complexion gradually improved, and they began to break through with all their might. However, Miss Xing's situation was not very good. Although she was already at the great perfection of the Demon King, she was still a little out of breath when she was suddenly pressed by the pressure. This feeling was like she was suddenly hit in the chest when she was fighting with someone. Moreover, the opponent's strength was above her. This kind of palm force continued to oppress her and she couldn't get rid of it at all. Now, apart from resisting with all her strength, Miss Xing had no other way to deal with this kind of pressure. She was a little regretful at the moment. Although the Venerable's origin force was indeed very pure, the pressure that followed was obviously unbearable for a person. In the face of the powerful pressure, the demonic energy in her body was like an innocent child facing a fierce giant beast. It was completely powerless to resist. Poof. After silently resisting for a long time, Miss Xing felt that her internal organs were churning, and her qi and blood were a little chaotic. However, the ruthless pressure was still constantly attacking her. She was forced to spit out a mouthful of blood that had accumulated in her chest. Only then did she feel a little more comfortable. However, in this situation, Miss Xing didn't dare to force it anymore. She immediately stopped running her mental cultivation method and interrupted her cultivation. She took out an elixir from her arms and swallowed it. She closed her eyes to adjust her internal injuries, and her mind was thinking intensely. What should I do? Could it be that I can only choose to dual cultivate with Xiaoqian? But to strip naked in front of so many people, especially in front of Xiaoqian, this seems a little. After Miss Xing finished adjusting her breathing, she opened her eyes and turned to look in Xiaoqian's direction. Although Qing Minjing and the others were also resisting the majestic pressure and didn't look too good, there were no signs of failure. It seemed that they could still persist for a long time. However, Xiaoqian looked relaxed as if nothing had happened. He continued to quietly run his mental cultivation method, and the pressure didn't affect him at all. Instead, he helped Qing Minjing and the others to bear the bursts of pressure brought by the Venerable's origin force. Chapter 12-18. Looking at the scene in front of her, Xing hesitated for a moment before finally making a decision. She stood up with a blush on her face. She bit her lower lip as she unbuttoned her clothes and slowly took off her clothes. After placing her clothes to the side, Xing took a deep breath and used her hands to cover a few important parts of her body. Then she carefully walked over to Xiaoqian and the others. Walking to Xiaoqian's side, Xing looked at the group of people in front of her. Their hands were pressed against each other and their eyes were closed. They were all focused on cultivating and didn't seem to have noticed her arrival. Xing Qiu didn't dare to interrupt them. She was afraid that she would distract them and cause them to go berserk. However, the clean and smooth Xing Qiu stood there alone. She felt that it was very awkward to stand there and not say anything. She didn't know what to do. She couldn't just stand there and wait for them to finish their breakthroughs before allowing Xiaoqian to dual cultivate with her alone, right? That would be even more difficult to accept. Just as Xing Qiu didn't know what to do, Xiaoqian suddenly opened his eyes slightly and glanced at her. He used his eyes to signal for her to sit beside him. Then he closed his eyes again and continued to circulate his mental cultivation. It turned out that when Xiaoqian was cultivating with the girls, he had continuously released his divine sense. Thus, when he sensed Xing Qiu's arrival, he hesitated and stood there as if he didn't know what to do. Thus he gave her some pointers. When she realized that Xiaoqian had suddenly opened his eyes and looked at her, Xing Qiu jumped in fright. However, when she met Xiaoqian's gaze, she realized that his eyes were extremely clear and didn't have any distracting thoughts. Furthermore, he quickly closed his eyes and didn't look at her body. Xing Qiu slowly calmed down and sat cross-legged on the ground. However, she still subconsciously covered her body with her hands and wasn't willing to immediately put them down. Feeling that Xing Qiu wasn't able to let go and didn't move for a long time, Xiaoqian became anxious. However, he didn't dare to suddenly let go when he was bearing the pressure for the girls. He could only close his eyes and whisper to Xing Qiu, "Xing Gongzi, give me your left hand and then use your right hand to touch Qing Minjing's left hand." Little Miss Xing was stunned for a moment before she suddenly reacted. She had joined in midway, so Xiaoqian definitely couldn't let go of her and command her at this time. Otherwise, the rest of the people might immediately be injured by the pressure. Therefore, she could only rely on herself for everything. Gritting her teeth, little girl Xing relaxed her left hand that was covering her chest. She gently reached over and placed it on the right hand that Xiaoqian had just separated from Qing Minjing's. Then she quickly extended her own right hand and replaced Xiaoqian in placing it on Qing Minjing's left hand. Feeling the unending flow of pure energy from both sides, little girl Xing couldn't be bothered to think about useless things anymore. She closed her eyes and began to circulate her mental cultivation method with all her might, attempting to break through. On the other side, Qing Minjing suddenly felt Xiaoqian's thick palm pull away. She was also slightly startled. However, before she could think further, another delicate palm quickly came over. Qing Minjing was exceptionally intelligent. After thinking for a while, she understood the reason. It seemed that little girl Xing had broken through the defenses in her heart and was finally willing to come over and cultivate with them. Although she was secretly happy in her heart, Qing Minjing's expression didn't change as she continued to focus on breaking through. Due to the addition of little girl Xing, Xiaoqian felt that the pressure coming from all directions had become even more intense. Fortunately, it was still within an acceptable range. He wouldn't collapse just because of the addition of another person. More importantly, Xiaoqin suddenly discovered something strange during his cultivation. In the past, if he wanted to level up, he would need to accumulate yuan qi and reach the peak stage before he could break through to the next level. However, this time, Xiaoqin felt that his strength was gradually increasing along with his cultivation. It actually directly surpassed the peak stage and allowed him to touch the barrier of the second level of the original infant stage. This situation made Xiaoqin feel a little incredulous. Could it be that he had already gone mad and was hallucinating? Xiaoqin, don't be so surprised. The Elder Heaven Ancestor could naturally feel Xiaoqin's confusion and explained in his mind, after a cultivator enters the original infant stage, they will no longer level up like before. The barrier of the peak stage has already disappeared. You don't need to know the details for now. In any case, there won't be any problems. Just focus on cultivating. That's good. Hearing this, Xiaoqin nodded slightly. Since the Elder Heaven Ancestor had explained the situation, he was a lot more relieved. He continued to immerse himself in resisting the pressure and cultivating. Not long after, Xiaoqin suddenly felt that the heaven and earth spiritual qi, or the venerable original force, gradually became thicker and thicker inside the barrier. All of it gathered around Qing Menjing and Tang Tang. In contrast, the pressure that the two women endured had also increased a lot. Their faces were a little pale, and even their breathing became rapid. Vaguely, Xiaoqin felt that this scene seemed a little familiar. He quickly used yuan qi to check the situation of the two women. He found that both Qing Menjing and Tang Tang had reached the threshold of a breakthrough. Tang Tang was about to break through to the venerable realm, and Qing Menjing was about to break through to the original infant stage. Only then did Xiaoqin realize that this scene was very familiar. No wonder he felt that this scene was very familiar. Didn't this phenomenon occur when he broke through in the past? Seeing that the two women were a little strained, Xiaoqin increased the strength of the guidance. He continued to use yuan qi to gradually transfer the stronger pressure that the two women endured to himself. The transfer of the pressure was considered smooth. Qing Menjing and Tang Tang's complexion gradually began to improve. However, before Xiaoqin could heave a sigh of relief, he immediately noticed that the heaven and earth spiritual qi in the barrier had become thicker again. It was faintly surging in the direction of little Miss Xing. This time Xiaoqin had enough experience. He used yuan qi to check little Miss Xing's situation. Things were as he expected. Little Miss Xing was also about to break through to the venerable realm. This was because the cultivation of the eldest Miss Tang Tang and little Miss Xing were not too far apart. They were already close to the threshold of the venerable realm, so their speed of breaking through was naturally faster than the other women. In fact, little Miss Xing and little Miss Xing should have broken through at the same time. It was just that they had been delayed for a while, so they were a little late. However, it was not delayed for too long. At this time, Xiaoqin had just transferred half of the pressure from Qing Menjing and Tang Tang. Little Miss Xing had suffered a little internal injury before, so her resistance to pressure was relatively poor. After experiencing the pressure, her face became even paler, and her body faintly trembled. Xiaoqin keenly sensed the situation and immediately shifted his focus to little Miss Xing. In addition to continuing to receive the pressure that Qing Menjing and Tang Tang were experiencing, he did not hesitate to guide the pressure that little Miss Xing was experiencing over. Chapter 12:19. After transferring all three auras to his body, Xiaoqin's expression changed slightly. He felt that something was amiss. He didn't expect the aura to be so much more violent than before. The three auras even made Xiaoqin, who wasn't restricted by the sovereign great perfection, feel a sense of suffocation. As the pressure in his body gradually increased, Xiaoqin could feel this aura jumping up and down wantonly in his dantian. Other than causing his meridians and blood vessels to expand continuously, even the speed of his heartbeat and blood flow was much faster than usual. Thump, 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 the sound of his heartbeat was like the beating of a drum reverberating in Xiaoqin's ears. He felt as if his entire body was about to explode. Ling Er and Xing Er, who were sitting beside Xiaoqin, also felt a trace of abnormality at this moment. This was because Xiaoqin's palms, which were pressed against their palms, were becoming hotter and hotter. The temperature was so high that it felt like it was being burned by fire. However, the two girls didn't dare to be distracted at this moment. After all, this was a critical moment of breaking through. A slight mistake could result in failure. Not only that, because everyone was cultivating together, their blood and qi were connected. It would also cause the others to suffer from the aura brought by the supremacy's origin force. At this moment, Xiaochen couldn't be bothered to control his body's temperature. He was using all his strength to resist the restless aura. The qi in his body was also constantly being consumed. This was because after the three auras merged into one, it became like a gluttonous taotai, endlessly devouring the qi in his body. Just as the aura was about to devour all the qi in Xiaochen's body, another pure wave of qi suddenly surged out from his sea of consciousness and continued to be transferred to the aura. It was as if a peerless delicacy had been served just when the dishes on the dining table were about to be finished. The aura seemed to be dancing in joy and immediately rushed towards that wave of qi. Elder Heaven Ancestor, what are you doing? Xiaochen was shocked and hurriedly asked. Since this pressure likes to devour your vitality, then I'll let it eat its fill. The Elder Heaven Ancestor was not in a hurry at all. As he spoke slowly, he controlled the yuan qi stored in his sea of consciousness and slowly sent it into Xiaochen's body. No way. What? Xiaochen's question came to an abrupt end. He suddenly understood the Elder Heaven Ancestor's intention. The pressure in his body had become more and more swollen due to the continuous devouring of yuan qi. It was like a balloon and it felt like it would explode with just a little poke. The Elder Heaven Ancestor's continuous output of yuan qi finally came to an end, and the last trace of yuan qi gushed out from his sea of consciousness. Without thinking, the round pressure directly rushed over and swallowed the yuan qi into his stomach. Boom boom boom. 3 loud booms suddenly came from Xiaochen's body. The yuan qi became the last straw that broke through the pressure. The pressure that was like a sphere was directly blasted into countless pieces. The remains of the pressure mixed with the yuan qi that it had swallowed before. It flowed along the meridians in Xiaochen's body for a few cycles, and finally slowly flowed into his dantian. At this time, Xiaochen had just digested the shock brought by the explosion of the pressure. After looking inside himself, he was surprised to find that at the moment the pressure exploded, he had actually been blown up by 3 levels, becoming an expert at level 4 of the original infant stage. He knew that the Elder Heaven Ancestor's intention was to use the pressure to let him level up, but he did not expect that the 3 waves of pressure could let him level up by 3 levels. It was a peerless treasure that was not inferior to the treasures of heaven and earth. At the same time that Xiaochen broke through, Miss Xing and Tang Tang also successfully leveled up and became experts at level 1 of the Venerable stage. Cheng Minjing also reached level 1 of the original infant stage. The 3 women let out a breath of turbid air, and instantly felt a lot more relaxed. However, they did not immediately stop cultivating. After all, Tian Suruan, Ling Er, and Ling Qinxue had not broken through yet. With the previous experience, Xiaochen was no longer worried. He guided the pressure in the other women's bodies and transferred it to his body. He also sped up the progress of their cultivation. In a short period of time, he helped them break through to the Venerable stage. Unsurprisingly, Xiaochen also enjoyed the treasure, and jumped up another 3 levels. When he opened his eyes again, he was already an expert at level 7 of the original infant stage. Looking down at his own hands, Xiaochen was also very surprised. He did not expect that he only wanted to help the women endure the pressure, and he could actually reap such a huge harvest. This is too surprising. It seems that these closed-door cultivation points are good stuff. I might as well level up to the full foundation of the original infant stage before I go out. When that time comes, I won't have to be afraid of anyone. Wah. Wahaha. Xiaochen had just thought of this when he heard a familiar laughter. He raised his head and saw that it was indeed Tian Soran who was dancing with joy. Tian Suruan had just finished her breakthrough and exhaled the turbid air in her body. Then, she immediately started cultivating and jumped around excitedly. Yay yay yay. Sister Suruan is also an expert at the Venerable stage now. What's going on? My husband Xiaochen, hurry up and take a look at me. I clearly remember that I have already broken through. Why am I still at the full foundation of the King realm? Suruan, you idiot. Cheng Minjing was the closest to Tian Suruan. She reached out her hand and knocked her on the head. Ouch ouch ouch. Tian Suruan held her head and said pitifully, how am I stupid? If Sister Suruan is really an idiot, it won't be so easy for me to break through this time. Cheng Minjing sighed and rolled her eyes at Tian Suruan. You still say you're not stupid? In the Venerable realm, everyone's cultivation level will be suppressed. Even if you become an expert at the Venerable stage, your strength will still be at the full foundation of the King realm. Isn't that elder son just now a living example? Oh, I see. No, wasn't Xiaochen husband at the peak of the level 2 Venerable stage? Why isn't his strength suppressed? Tian Suruan scratched her chin in surprise. Then she muttered to herself thoughtfully, yes, Xiaoqin husband is an invincible mutant. He's different from those weaklings. Tian Suruan's silly and adorable state of asking and answering her own questions made Qing Minjing feel both angry and amused at the same time. She shook her head helplessly. The other girls were also amused after listening to her. One by one they rocked back and forth with laughter. This Tian Suruan was simply a living treasure. With her around, the entire journey would not be lonely. Lady Xing also laughed along for a while. Then she suddenly realized that something was wrong. She hurriedly stood up and hid to the side. She nervously put on her clothes and pants. In her haste, she almost put on the wrong side. Chapter 12:20. TSK, look, Xing's figure is really not bad. Tian Xiaoring propped her chin on her hand and raised her eyebrows. She looked at Xing's perfectly curved back and commented, Sister Minjing's upper body is much bigger, and her butt is also perkier than Sister Xiaoring's. Looks like the girls of the inner martial arts world are indeed extraordinary if they train from a young age. It's a pity that I escaped to the secular world when I was young and didn't get to enjoy this benefit. How unlucky. Big your head. I find that you're becoming more and more like an idiot. You might as well be a female pervert. Qing Minjing couldn't help but knock Tian Xiaoring's head again and scolded her. Sister Minjing, you keep knocking Sister Xiaoring's head like that. What if Sister Xiaoring becomes stupid? Tian Xiaoring pouted and rubbed her head as she complained gloomily. You're not smart to begin with. Who knows, maybe after I knock you a few times, you'll become a genius. When that time comes, you'll have to rush up to thank me for knocking your head. Qing Minjing joked. She took her clothes and quickly put them on. She didn't forget to continue talking to Tian Xiaoring. What are you standing there for? Hurry up and put on your clothes. Tian Xiaoring pouted. Seeing that everyone was putting on their clothes, she said unwillingly, there's no one here to see. If I want to be naked, then so be it. It's cooler. What's the big deal? Qing Minjing had already put on her clothes. Seeing that Tian Xiaoring still didn't move, she walked over helplessly and picked up Tian Xiaoring's clothes, helping her put them on piece by piece. I said you're stupid and you still won't admit it. As Qing Minjing helped her put on her clothes, she lectured, why don't you think about it? Now that we've already broken through to the venerable realm, Xiaoqin naturally has to remove the barrier. Don't tell me we can't return? If you really don't want to wear anything, do you want to leave the martial honor realm naked? Do as you please. Okay then. I'll put it on. Tian Wangshuo thought that what Qing Minjing said made sense, so she pouted and agreed. After Qing Minjing and the others finished putting on their clothes, Xiaoqin stood up and casually put on his clothes. He simply said, you guys stay here first. I'll go check on Jia Muzhen and Jia Renzhong's situation. I don't know if they have successfully broken through. After walking out, Xiaoqin looked at the sky and found that it was already late at night. This place was relatively remote, and there were no other people wandering around. After looking around, he stepped into Jia Muzhen's barrier. As soon as he stepped into the barrier and came to the side of Jia Muzhen and Jia Renzhong, Xiaoqin found something wrong. He saw that the two of them were sweating profusely and were trying hard to resist the pressure brought by the martial honor's origin force. However, there were no signs of a breakthrough. Xiaoqin frowned slightly when he witnessed this scene. Even though they'd relied on mutual cultivation to advance into the perfection stage of the monarch realm, it was still extremely dangerous for them to charge into the exalt realm rashly without consolidating their cultivations. Based on the current situation, Xiaoqin speculated that if this continued, both of them were likely to suffer from qi deviation. The situation was so urgent that Xiaoqin had no choice but to sit cross-legged beside the two of them. He also used his own primordial qi to help them absorb the pressure and gradually guided the martial qi in their bodies to integrate with the surrounding spiritual qi of heaven and earth. With Xiaoqin's intervention, Jia Muzhen and Jia Renzhong, who were originally on the verge of collapse, suddenly felt a lot more relaxed. They were not as nervous as before, and the circulation of the mental cultivation method became smoother and smoother, and the speed also increased. After about an hour or so, the pressure in the barrier finally gradually disappeared. The whole process was daunting but not dangerous. Jia Muzhen and Jia Renzhong successfully broke through and became martial honor experts. Exhaling a mouthful of turbid air, Jia Muzhen and Jia Renzhong opened their eyes and looked at Xiaoqin together. Their hearts were filled with gratitude towards him. Phew, Xiaoqin, thank you for your timely help. Otherwise, I'm afraid I and Jia Renzhong would have been in danger today. Jia Muzhen still felt a lingering fear when he recalled that he was suffocated by the pressure. At this moment he finally let out a long sigh of relief and patted Xiao Chen's shoulder. Big brother Xiao, words cannot express my gratitude. Jia Renzhong will remember your kindness. Jia Renzhong was also at a loss. His eyes were red, and he incoherently expressed his gratitude to Xiao Chen. He did not expect that in just a day he had successfully entered the ranks of martial honor experts. Jia Renzhong felt as if he was in a dream. Everything was so unreal. Father, mother, uncle, I have finally brought honor to my ancestors. It's nothing. Let's go, Menjing and the rest are still waiting. Let's go over and talk. Xiao Chen casually waved his hand and casually snapped his fingers, removing the barrier on both sides. Then he stood up and walked over to Qing Menjing. Wow, Four Eyes, you actually succeeded in breaking through as well. Looks like Sister Saori's husband helped you again, right? Tian Saori looked at Jia Muzhen and said with a smile, when we go back, don't forget to treat us to a feast. Sister Saori wants to eat high-grade snow beef, Australian lobster, abalone, and king crab. Do you understand? Tian Saori's saliva was almost dripping down as he counted the various delicacies with his fingers. He looked like he was about to drool. No problem at all. Xiao Chen has helped me so many times. It won't cost me much to treat you guys to a good meal. If one meal is not enough, we can have another one. Don't forget that I'm already the Jia clan's clan head. Jia Muzhen patted his chest and agreed in a single breath. After advancing to martial honor expert, Jia Muzhen had become more and more confident. After all, the internal martial arts world was a place where one's words were spoken by one's strength. Now that his strength had skyrocketed and he had the backing of a big family, his backbone was naturally firmer. Not bad. In that case, Sister Saori will be waiting for your good news. Let me tell you, don't try to fool me. Otherwise, I will let my husband Xiao Chen beat you up. Tian Saori waved her little fist and said proudly. Alright, Saori, stop fooling around. Xiao Chen smiled and patted Tian Saori's head. Then he strode out of the seclusion area. Husband Xiao Chen, what are you going out for? Are we going back now? Actually, Sister Saori is not in a hurry to eat a feast. Tian Saori asked curiously as she looked at Xiao Chen's back. Almost everyone present had the same attitude. All of them had just broken through after enduring the harsh pressure. At this moment they were a little tired. Moreover, it was late at night and they did not want to rush back so soon. Chapter 12:21. Xiao Chen turned around and shook his head with a smile. Now that all of you are at the Venerable Realm, why don't you take this opportunity to consolidate your cultivation? After all, there is a huge gap between the Venerable Realm and the King Realm. All of you need to get used to it first. I'm just going to take a walk nearby to see if I can get some wild game. Everyone must be hungry after working hard all day. Wow, there's wild game to eat. My husband Xiao Chen, you're the best. I want to eat roast chicken, duck and pigeon. Speaking of which, my stomach is really growling. Tian Sour cheered and touched his stomach. Then his face turned gloomy. Xiao Chen, you're going alone? That's not a good idea, is it? Why don't we go with you? If there's any danger, we can take care of each other. Tang Tang asked with a frown. She was still worried that Xiao Chen would encounter those people from the Open Heaven sect again. No problem. In this venerable secret realm, there is no one who can defeat me. Don't worry, I'll be back soon. Xiao Chen waved his hand. After that, his figure flashed and disappeared into the fog of the night. Everyone looked at each other. Although they were a little worried, they agreed that what Xiao Chen said was true. After all, apart from him, everyone else in the venerable secret realm was suppressed to the full completion of the King realm. However, he was not affected at all. Therefore, the others were not on the same level as him. After chatting casually for a while, everyone sat down with their legs crossed and began to consolidate their cultivation. The defensive measures of the secluded cultivation area gradually emitted a faint white light as they operated their mental cultivation methods. Xiao Chen, who was advancing in the night, did not look relaxed. Instead, he looked a little confused. Although he could easily kill an expert at the full completion of the venerable realm with his current strength, what puzzled him was that when he helped Jia Muzhen and Jia Renzhong to make a breakthrough, he did not succeed. Now he was still at level 7 of the original infant stage. What's going on? Is it because 3 men are doing dual cultivation instead of yin and yang dual cultivation, so they are unable to obtain enough spiritual chi to upgrade? That should be it. Otherwise, there would be no other explanation. Putting away his doubts, Xiaoqin flew in a certain direction. He did not look like he was searching for food aimlessly. As it turned out, apart from finding food for everyone, Xiaoqin had another important reason for coming out this time. When Xiaoqin was breaking through, he vaguely sensed a familiar aura in the venerable realm. Although it was fleeting, Xiaoqin still managed to catch hold of it. Furthermore, he could sense that the aura wasn't too far away from their seclusion location. Out of curiosity, Xiaoqin decided to head over to take a look. Breaking through the thick fog surrounding him, Xiaoqin released his divine sense while moving forward. Along the way, mist pervaded the air, and the place was desolate and uninhabited. From time to time, there would be one or two shrill and horrifying cries coming from the surroundings. Even when Xiaoqin used his spiritual sense to sense it, he could not tell what kind of creature these cries came from. Xiaoqin guessed that it was just as Qiu Wanxian had said, the cries of the strange beasts in the venerable realm. The entire venerable realm was filled with strangeness. If an ordinary person heard this sound, they would probably be terrified and paralyzed on the ground. Xiaoqin did not stop even though he had such thoughts in his mind. He continued to stride forward with a clear goal in mind. As he got closer to his destination, Xiaoqin's senses became stronger. Although he did not know what was waiting in front of him, he did not hesitate at all. Intuition told Xiaoqin that the familiar feeling in front of him would not cause him any harm. After walking for a while, Xiaoqin finally saw a cluster of fire and a white light from afar. Only then did he stop cautiously. Although Xiaoqin was currently at the 7th level of the original infant stage, his cultivation had already reached the realm of returning to one's natural state. Unless the opponent was also a cultivator and had a higher cultivation level than Xiaoqin, they would not be able to sense his presence, let alone his cultivation level. However, Xiaoqin did not let his guard down. He carefully hid behind a tree and condensed his divine sense into the shape of a cone. Then he slowly released it towards the fire to investigate. What is going on? Why did I fail to break through to the venerable realm? As Xiaoqin's divine sense got closer, a young man's voice could be heard from afar. It sounded a little anxious. I'm not too sure either. Everyone has used up so many treasures and finally reached the king's full circle. There's no reason for them to fail. Could it be that we have overlooked some details? Another charming and delicate female voice was heard. Xiaoqin furrowed his brows slightly. This voice sounded a little familiar. However, he could not remember where he had heard it before. Impossible. Hong Laosan and I have observed carefully from the side several times. You all followed the rules and did not make any mistakes. How could you have failed? The anxious male voice gradually became louder. Obviously, Xiaoqin's divine sense had spread to the vicinity of that area. This is not right. I think we must have done something we shouldn't have done in the process. I see that everyone is a little tired. Why don't we stop here for today and continue to break through tomorrow morning? What do you think? Just as his divine sense reached that ball of fire, Xiaoqin finally heard a voice that made him extremely shocked, but also extremely familiar. Jianghu. This kind of voice was extremely gentle and amiable even when she was scolding someone. It was a voice that made people feel like they were bathing in the spring breeze. It was simply the exclusive right of his eternal goddess, Jianghu. Apart from her, who else could make him feel so close? How could Xiaoqin not be able to tell from the way he spoke? Xiaoqin's divine sense gradually spread out. Everywhere it reached, the faces of everyone around the fire were clearly revealed. At this time, Xiaoqin stood motionless behind the tree. He was so shocked that he could not even speak. Other than incomparable shock, there was no other way to describe his current mood. The familiar faces of Jianghu, Hongzhu, and Hong Yan appeared in Xiaoqin's mind one by one. They were sitting in a circle in a seclusion area. Although the expressions on their faces were different, some were frowning, some were calm, Xiaoqin still recognized them in an instant. There was also a woman sitting next to them. She had a curvaceous figure and exuded a mature charm. Xiaoqin also felt that she looked a little familiar. After a closer look, he found that the woman was actually Xie Fei. Chapter 12:22. It was Consort Xie, the wealthy woman who had helped him earn his first pot of gold in order to find a dog. The Wang family and the Xie family had misunderstood her as his exclusive property. Wasn't she a pitiful woman who had been betrothed to Wang Xiongzhuang but was unable to have sex with him? Why had she come to the venerable secret realm? Judging from the way the women were whispering to each other, she seemed to be quite familiar with Hongzhu and the others. Apart from the 4 women, there were 2 young men standing at the side of the seclusion area. They seemed to be helping to keep watch. One of the men stood closer to Xiao Chen. He was dressed in white, while the other was dressed in fiery red. Both of them had grave expressions on their faces. The conversation that Xiao Chen had heard earlier was most likely between the white-clothed man and Hongzhu. Hongzhu's voice was soft and coarse, and it was very easy to recognize. Xiao Chen was the closest to the white-clothed man, so his divine sense was the first to detect them. "Why don't we try again?" The white-clothed man didn't listen to Shen Jingshuan's suggestion. Clearly unwilling to give up, he continued to earnestly persuade them. "Most importantly, we don't have much time left. The sacrificial ceremony is about to begin. If we don't take this opportunity to raise everyone's strength to the venerable realm, we'll have to wait for another year. We can't afford to waste time." "Song Qingshu, aren't you a little too heartless? It's already so late and everyone has been working hard for the entire day. It wasn't easy for them to reach the peak of the King realm, and they've already failed to reach the venerable realm so many times. Why do they have to try again? Can't we continue tomorrow?" Hongzhu frowned and objected in a very harsh tone. Hongzhu was already in a very bad mood. Because she hadn't found enough women with spiritual qi to participate in the sacrificial ceremony, she had hurriedly returned from the secular world to the Hong clan. Apart from being scolded by the Hong clan's patriarch, she was also forced to rush to the venerable secret realm with a few other women to raise their cultivation. Fortunately, the location of the Hong family was very close to the pier of the venerable realm. Thus, Hongzhu and the others were able to arrive at the scene just before the entrance to the venerable realm was about to close, pay the spirit jades and enter the venerable realm. After little Miss Xing met up with Elder Sun, they saw several figures at the transportation point before they left. It was Hongzhu's group, the last group before the entrance to the secret realm closed. In fact, Hongzhu was also very clear that since old Patriarch Hong had ordered her to break through to the venerable realm, he definitely intended for her to participate in the sacrificial ceremony. Naturally, she was unwilling from the bottom of her heart, but she could not resist the enraged old Master Hong. She could only obediently follow Shen Jingxian, Hong Yan, and Xie Fei into the mystic realm. Originally, Hongzhu had secretly planned to delay for a period of time. Once he had broken through to the martial venerable realm, he would look for an opportunity to escape and hide in the secular world. She hadn't expected Song Qingshu to keep urging her. An inexplicable anger burned in her heart, and she didn't speak as politely as before. "Big sister, don't complain. In any case, we're already here, so let's hurry up and give it another try. Who knows, we might be able to successfully break through to the venerable realm next time." Hong Yan didn't object and gently persuaded her. Hong Yan was obedient, and she had always been very obedient to the orders of her family. At this moment, she was also hoping that she could quickly raise her cultivation and contribute her meager strength to the family. "Hong Yan, why do I feel that you're a little biased towards Song Qingshu? Could it be that the two of you are secretly having an affair?" Hongzhu glanced at Hong Yan and suddenly chuckled. "Ew. What nonsense are you talking about? Song Qingshu and I are innocent, and I've already sworn to never marry in my life. Don't you know about this?" Hong Yan had always been a reserved and obedient girl, so how could she withstand Hong Yan's teasing? Her face instantly flushed red. "I don't know about that. Recently, I've noticed that the two of you are often in the same boat, and even your tones are similar. I thought that the two of you were secretly together." Hongzhu's expression didn't change and she continued to speak with a smile, but anyone could see that she was impatient. "Hongzhu, you've misunderstood. There really is nothing between me and Hong Yan. It's just that we have the same goal." Song Qingshu's throat was dry as she tried her best to explain. "Alright, enough with the pleasantries." Hongzhu interrupted Song Qingshu with a wave of her hand and playfully shrugged. She found a place to sit down, yawned and said, "My sister has a lot of ideas, and it's her freedom to be with whoever she wants. In any case, I can't do anything about it. I'm going to rest now and we'll talk about cultivation tomorrow." "You." Hong Yan stomped her feet in frustration at Hongzhu's sarcastic words. Looking at Hongzhu's lazy expression, Hong Yan knew that there was no way she could convince Hongzhu to continue cultivating today, so she simply turned her face away, pouted her lips and sulked. Shen Jingxian and Xie Fei both felt that the atmosphere was a little awkward. They wanted to step forward and be the peacemaker, but they felt that this was the Hong family's matter, and it wasn't appropriate for them to get involved. Thus, in the end, they could only look at each other and smile bitterly, and silently waited at the side. As for third young Master Hong, he was even more helpless. Song Qingshu hadn't even finished speaking when she was interrupted. Was she supposed to go up and provoke them? After all, this was a fight between women, and as a man, it wasn't appropriate for him to intervene. It was better to wait for them to slowly calm down. Little Hongzhu, Goddess Shin, since the two of you want to break through to the martial supremacy realm so badly, why don't you let me come up with an idea? Just as the atmosphere in the seclusion area became extremely stagnant, and everyone was silent as they prepared to rest, a voice suddenly came from the nearby forest. As soon as the voice finished, a figure slowly walked out of the fog. Who is it? Song Qingshu's body tensed up, and she immediately circulated her mental cultivation method. She vigilantly looked at the blurry figure in the distance, and secretly blamed herself for being too careless. She was so focused on discussing the breakthrough method with Hongzhu and the others that she even forgot to spread out her divine sense. Third young Master Hong quickly stood up as well. His body trembled, and he displayed the strength of a peak 4th level martial supremacy. His eyes were like two sharp swords that had been unsheathed as he stared at the newcomer. His entire body was slightly arched, like a ferocious tiger that was ready to attack at any time. The few absent-minded women in the seclusion area were slightly stunned, and their gazes also turned to the figure walking over from the distance. Shin Jingxian and Hongzhu were a little puzzled. This person's voice sounded very familiar. Could it be someone they knew? Especially Shin Jingxian. She didn't know why, but at this moment her heart suddenly started pounding. She stared unblinkingly at the figure, and her delicate fists were tightly clenched. She looked extremely nervous, but she was completely unaware of it. Chapter 12:23. Shin Jingxian only saw his face clearly when the person walked out of the fog. She was stunned. Xiao Chen. This person was actually the Xiao Chen that she had been yearning for day and night. How was this possible? Why was Xiao Chen in the Venerable Realm? Didn't Hongzhu say that he had been captured by the people from the inner martial arts world? Could it be that the Hong family's information was wrong? Was he here to look for her? How did he know that she was here? Countless questions emerged in Shin Jingshuan's mind. She wanted to take a step forward and immediately run towards Xiao Chen, but her feet seemed to have grown roots in the ground. She could only stand there and watch as Xiao Chen walked closer and closer. The other women also found it hard to believe. Hongzhu even subconsciously rubbed his eyes and pinched his cheeks hard, only to find that it actually hurt. It seemed that he was not dreaming. The person in front of him was indeed Xiao Chen. Boy, stop right there. Don't go near this seclusion point again, or I won't be polite. Song Qingshu stared coldly at Xiao Chen. In a flash, he blocked the seclusion point and stretched out his hand to make a gesture to stop him. For some reason, when Song Qingshu looked at the man in front of her, she couldn't help but feel a sense of disgust. Hello, Goddess Shen, little Hongzhu, Xiafei Hongyan, long time no see. Did you all miss me? Xiao Chen directly ignored Song Qingshu's warning and continued to walk towards the seclusion point unhurriedly. He even smiled and waved at the women. However, although he did not show it on the surface, Xiao Chen's heart was somewhat solemn. He could clearly feel that Song Qingshu's cultivation state indicated that he was a cultivator. Even the red-clothed third young Master Hong was also a cultivator. It seemed that the inner martial arts world was really full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Apart from the number 1 sect of the Demon Sect, Awakening Heaven Sect, there was actually such a high-level cultivator. Moreover, from the contents of their conversation, Xiao Chen could tell that they belonged to two different families, the Song family and the Hong family. It seemed that this cultivator clan was quite large. Xiao Chen, is that really you? Could it be that I've cultivated too much and am hallucinating? Shin Jingxian blinked her big eyes and stared blankly at Xiao Chen. She was so excited that her heart was like a tsunami. She murmured to herself. Of course, the real Xiao Chen is here. Xiao Chen smiled slightly and stared at Shin Jingshuan's gentle and beautiful face. He continued to say, if you don't believe me, I can also give you some examples to prove it. For example, we met a big shark when we went out to sea in Songning City. For example, you and I sat in Bei's Panamera and raced together. For example, I helped you settle the few good-for-nothings from the Shen family, and then as Xiao Chen spoke with great familiarity, beautiful memories of himself and Shin Jingxian emerged in his mind. His heart was in turmoil. He looked at Shen Jingxian, whom he had not seen for a whole year, and his throat was a little choked. Before Xiao Chen could finish speaking, Shen Jingxuan's eyes became moist. Her motionless body, which seemed to have been immobilized, suddenly regained the ability to move. She immediately jumped out of the seclusion area and flew over. She threw herself into Xiao Chen's arms like a swallow returning to its nest. Xiao Chen hugged Shen Jingxian tightly in his arms. For a moment, neither of them spoke. He could feel Shen Jingxian trembling in his arms. Not long after, a large patch of his shirt became wet. Xiao Chen was filled with emotions as he stroked Shen Jingxuan's hair. He had imagined countless scenes of reuniting with his goddess, but he never expected to meet her unexpectedly in the venerable realm. Perhaps it was not an accident. If not for that trace of familiarity that made him chase after her, the two of them might have missed each other again. After crying silently for a while, Shen Jingxian finally calmed down a little. She raised her head to look at Xiao Chen, her arms still tightly hugging him. She said in a low voice, "Xiao Chen, where have you been for the past year? Why didn't you give me a call? You shouldn't have done that. Do you know that?" Xiao Chen, who was immersed in the emotions of reuniting with her, nearly laughed out loud. Goddess Shen was still the same. She loved to educate him no matter what, but she also made him feel like he was bathing in a spring breeze. Gently wiping away the tears on Shen Jingxuan's face, Xiao Chen explained helplessly, I ran into some trouble, didn't I? I tried calling you a few times after you went to cultivate with Hongzhu, but you weren't in the service area, so there was nothing I could do." Xie Fei felt a little jealous when she saw Xiao Chen and Shen Jingxian tightly hugging each other. She was also very excited to see Xiao Chen and very much wanted to immediately bury herself in Xiao Chen's arms to experience the feeling of being loved. However, the current situation clearly did not allow her to do so, so she could only stand there and watch silently. Hongzhu pulled Song Qingshu to the side and briefly explained Xiao Chen's identity to Song Qingshu and third young master Hong so that they would not misunderstand him further. It would not be good if they attacked him and made a mistake. However, Hong Yen, who was standing behind Xie Fei, had a look of disdain on her face. She even turned her gaze to the side and ignored the touching scene in front of her. She did not have a good impression of Xiao Chen to begin with. She had always thought that he was a shameless lecher, so she turned a deaf ear to Xiao Chen's greeting. Shen Jingxian wiped her face and smiled through her tears. Right, the sect I went to cultivate was indeed in a rather remote location in the outer martial world, so the signal on my phone wasn't very good. I couldn't receive calls from the secular world at all. It looks like I've wronged you. I'm sorry. Is there a need for apologies between us? Xiao Chen looked at Shen Jingxian, who was always so warm and amiable, with a face full of pity. Shen Jingxian looked into Xiao Chen's eyes and a sweet smile appeared on her face. She asked softly, "Why did you come here? Hongzhu previously told me that you were captured by people from the inner martial world. I was worried about you for a long time. It's great to see that you're fine now." In fact, Shen Jingxian had always been a rather reserved person. She usually hid her worries and would not reveal them at all. However, at this moment, when she saw Xiao Chen, whom she had been thinking about day and night, her suppressed emotions suddenly erupted. She did not care that there were other people watching from the side. She just wanted to hold Xiao Chen like this forever and talk to him quietly. It's a long story, but the situation is special now. I'll help you break through to the martial supremacy stage first. Once you're done, we can slowly talk in detail. Xiao Chen naturally understood Shen Jingxuan's impulsiveness and dependence, but he did not want to continue showing off their affection in front of everyone. Thus, he gently said to Shen Jingxian, Chapter 1224. Alright, I'll listen to you. Although Shen Jingxian was currently overwhelmed with emotions and wanted to continue being intimate with Xiao Chen like this, she naturally listened to everything Xiao Chen said and immediately nodded obediently. Xiao Chen pulled Shen Jingxuan's hand and slowly walked towards the seclusion area. He also beckoned to Hongzhu and said, "Little Hongzhu, do you want to come with us? I've invented a method that has a 100% success rate in breaking through. I promise I won't cheat you." Before Hongzhu could speak, Song Qingshu stepped forward and said expressionlessly, "Brat, although you are Shen Jingxuan's boyfriend, the matter of breaking through to the venerable realm should still be left to us. Don't even think about blindly getting involved. Since you have already met and talked about old times, you can leave now." Little Hongzhu, is this person's brain jammed in the door? What does it have to do with him that I'm helping my goddess Shen break through? Xiao Chen curled his lips and said indifferently. Xiao Chen could clearly feel Song Qingshu's hostility, but he didn't want to take it too seriously. After all, Song Qingshu was a cultivator, and he didn't want to act rashly before he had a clear understanding of the strength of the Song and Hong families. What did you say? Although Xiao Chen had chosen to express himself in a relatively mild manner, Song Qingshu, a disciple of an influential family in the martial arts world, had never suffered such humiliation before. He was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. With a loud roar, he was about to rush over and kill Xiao Chen with a palm strike when he was stopped by Hong Zhu. Hong Zhu first took a deep look at Xiao Chen, then turned to Song Qingshu and said indifferently, "I don't think what Xiao Chen said is wrong. Xin Jingxian is his girlfriend. As long as Jingxian is willing, we have no right to interfere in their private matters. Have you forgotten that our principle is not to force others to do things they don't want to do? Big sister, how can this be considered a private matter? That lecher definitely harbors ill intentions and wants to ruin our plans." Hong Yan naturally disagreed with Xiao Chen's actions. She glared fiercely at him and protested angrily. Hong Zhu frowned. She was very unhappy with Hong Yan's words. She knew why Hong Yan hated Xiao Chen, but she had never expected that Hong Yan would use it as a pretext to target Xiao Chen. Wasn't this last too brainless? You. Just as Hong Zhu was about to retaliate, Xin Jingxian saw that the two of them were about to start arguing again and hurriedly spoke up to dissuade them. "You guys stop arguing, I'll tell you my opinion. After all, we've tried many times before, but we haven't been able to break through successfully. So even if it's a desperate attempt, we still have to try. Who are you calling a dead horse?" Xiao Chen gently knocked on Xin Jingshuan's head and said, feeling annoyed and amused at the same time, "That's not what I meant, you understand?" Xin Jingxian playfully stuck out her tongue at Xiao Chen, then stared at him and continued, "Moreover, big sister Hong Zhu is right. Since this is a matter between me and Xiao Chen, I have the right to decide what to do. Now I choose to trust his methods. At the same time, I hope that none of you will interfere with my decision." This. Hong Yan was dumbfounded. She was rather speechless towards Xin Jingxian. She really could not understand why a girl as intelligent and quick-witted as Xin Jingxian would listen to the words of a lecher like Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen held Xin Jingshuan's hand as he looked at Hong Yan and indifferently said, "All right, now that the matter has been resolved, we're going to start cultivating. Miss Hong Yan, I'll have to trouble you to move your precious jade feet and lend us your seclusion location for a while." Hong Yan's expression fluctuated for a while. Finally, she angrily glared at Xiao Chen, snorted angrily, and strode out of the seclusion location. Xiao Chen ignored her and turned to CFA with a smile. "CFA, I'll have to trouble you to move aside first. I'll be able to help Xin Jingxian complete her breakthrough very soon. Just wait for a while, you'll be able to continue your breakthrough here." The reason why he had put on two different faces was because Xiao Chen felt that Hong Yan was too annoying. This girl was like a cow, stubborn to the point of no return. Previously, after she misunderstood him, Xiao Chen tried to explain himself several times, but he failed. Now she was even worse and began to doubt his character. Therefore, Xiao Chen felt that there was no need to be polite with her, so he directly drove her away. But CFA was different. Although she was a little infatuated, Xiao Chen felt that she was a good person. Not only did she let him complete his first task as a white fox and get his first funds, but she also introduced him to many tasks when he was in dire straits. Compared to Hong Yan, she was much better. However, although she was gentle and polite on the surface, Xiao Chen still secretly kept an eye on CFA. This mature and domineering woman usually looked like a rich wife. He didn't expect that she was also a cultivator. Moreover, now that Xiao Chen thought about it, when they first met, CFA's cultivation should have been higher than his, but she had hidden it so well that even he couldn't detect the slightest flaw. However, something unexpected happened immediately. Not only did CFA not obey and leave, but she also blushed and bit her lower lip, softly but firmly saying, "Xiao Chen, actually, I also want to become a venerable as soon as possible. Can you help me make a breakthrough together?" "Senior sister Xiao Fei, you're not joking, are you?" Before Xiao Chen could react, Hong Zhu was dumbfounded and hurriedly objected, "Why don't we wait for Xin Jingxian to successfully make a breakthrough, then we can try Xiao Chen's method. What do you think?" At this time, Hong Zhu's heart was on the verge of collapsing. What was going on? Although he knew that CFA was deeply in love with Xiao Chen, breaking through to the venerable realm was not a child's play. If anything went wrong, she could go berserk and lose her life. Xiafei was being too casual. In truth, Hongzhu still didn't believe Xiao Chen's words about being able to help Xin Jingxian make a breakthrough in a short period of time. Although she did think that Xiao Chen was an omnipotent expert in the secular world and knew all kinds of tricks, this was still the Venerable Realm's mystic realm. The Venerable Realm was not like the secular world, where one only needed to move their fists and legs to solve problems. What was more important was opportunity and strength and even a little bit of luck. Hongzhu, you don't need to say anything. I know what I'm doing. Xiafei shook her head and rejected Hongzhu's suggestion. Then she looked deeply at Xiao Chen and smiled. My view of Xiao Chen is actually the same as Xin Jingshuan's, and that is to trust him 100%. Seeing Xiafei's gaze, Hongzhu could only sigh softly. He knew that he couldn't change her mind, so he helplessly accepted his fate and said, "This? All right, then I wish you good luck." Chapter 12:25. Hong Yen, Song Qingshu, and the others who were standing outside the seclusion area had ugly expressions on their faces. However, there was nothing they could do about Xiafei. After all, this was her own will, and they had no right to interfere. They could only glare at Xiao Chen, annoyed that he had suddenly appeared and inexplicably interfered. Xiao Chen hesitated for a moment, then asked ambiguously, "That? Xiafei, this kind of breakthrough method is quite special. The two parties must be in a boyfriend and girlfriend relationship, so it won't be too awkward. How about, you reconsider?" Xiao Chen had never imagined that Xiafei would take the initiative to ask to join them in dual cultivation. Even Hongzhu hadn't agreed to his invitation just now. This dual cultivation required everyone to be naked. Xiafei didn't have a particularly close relationship with him, so it seemed inappropriate for her to take off her clothes as soon as they met. Xiao Chen, you're too cute. In fact, I've already confessed to Jingxian in private. Now the two of us are as harmonious as sisters. Do you still think I'm not suitable? As if she had seen through Xiao Chen's thoughts, Xiafei giggled and winked charmingly as she spoke slowly. This was the first time Xiao Chen had been called cute, and he was speechless. He subconsciously turned to look at Xin Jingxian and found that she had actually nodded slightly with a red face, obviously agreeing with Xiafei's words. This time Xiao Chen was completely confused. What was going on? What had happened while he was away? A woman's world was really hard to understand. How is it? Do you believe me? Do you want your goddess Shen to personally admit this to you? Xiafei covered her mouth and laughed. Her small cherry lips were faintly discernible between her slender fingers, extremely tempting one's imagination. Xiao Chen shook his head. Now was not the time to investigate the ins and outs. As long as goddess Shen agreed, it was fine. As for Xiafei's matter, he would think about it when he was free in the future. Since Jingxian doesn't object, then you can cultivate with us, but don't regret it later. Xiao Chen reluctantly agreed, but he was still worried and added another sentence. Of course I don't regret it. I was afraid that you would be too shy to accept it, Xiao Chen, little white fox. Xiafei's eyebrows curved as she used her charming and intoxicating voice to speak. In addition to her seductive voice, coupled with her seductive eyes and exquisite figure, ordinary men would not be able to resist. Even Xiao Chen could not help but swallow his saliva. Cough cough. Xiao Chen hastily used his spiritual force to control his mind. He pretended to cough twice and lightly said, "Then let's not waste time and start cultivating. You and Jingxian first sit cross-legged in the seclusion spot and don't circulate your cultivation method for the time being. Wait for me to arrange everything and tell you that it's okay." Looking at Xiao Chen pretending to be calm, Xiafei was a little surprised at his resistance to her charm. She also felt that Xiao Chen was very nervous, but still pretending to be serious was very interesting. She wanted to tease him, but Xin Jingxian pulled her sleeves and signaled her to stop. Got it? Xiafei pouted. She was still afraid that Xin Jingxian would mind, so she restrained her expression. The two of them sat down at the designated spot by Xiao Chen, and then they held hands and whispered something. To avoid being seen by Song Qingshu and the Hong family's third young master, Xiao Chen stood outside the seclusion spot. He first cast a camouflage spell on the two of them and the Hong family's sisters, and then he laid a barrier inside the seclusion spot. After everything was arranged properly, he felt relieved and walked inside the barrier. Hongzhu and the others only felt that the bonfire on the ground suddenly flickered, and the scene in front of them seemed to be a bit blurry. But when they looked carefully, it was no different from before. They saw Xiaochen walk into the seclusion spot and sit opposite to Xie Fei and Shen Jingxian. Then, the three of them closed their eyes and silently circulated their cultivation methods. All of this was naturally an illusion arranged by Xiaochen. Although Song Qingshu and the others were cultivators, their level was not as high as Xiaochen's, so they naturally couldn't detect anything wrong. Okay, I've arranged everything. You can take off your clothes. It seems that you didn't bring any spare clothes. It's safer to take them off, lest you have no clothes to wear when you explode later. After walking into the seclusion spot, Xiaochen instructed and took the initiative to take off his coat. As soon as he took off his coat, Xiaochen sensed that the two women didn't seem to be moving. He turned around and found that they both had a blank look on their faces. What's wrong with you? Xiaochen stretched out his hand and waved it in front of them in surprise. Are you stupid? I'm not joking. That? Xiaochen, aren't you going to help us break through? Why do we still need to take off our clothes? Isn't this not very good? Shen Jingshuan's face turned slightly red and she said a little shyly, If you really want to do that with us, at least wait until after we break through, right? Shen Jingxian thought that Xiaochen couldn't wait to have a passionate moment with her after reuniting after such a long time, so her expression was a little unnatural. Besides, Sister Xie Fei was still there. Although they called each other sisters now, to do this kind of thing with Xiaochen together, just imagining the scene made Shen Jingxian feel like her face was on fire. That's right, brother Xiaochen, I didn't know that you're so impatient. Xie Fei wasn't as shy as Shen Jingxian. She winked at Xiaochen and calmly teased him. Xiaochen also knew that the two would definitely have this question, so he patiently explained, You're thinking too much. We're going to use the method of dual cultivation in a while, but the moment we break through to the supremacy stage, the powerful energy will burst our clothes. I'm afraid that you won't have clothes to wear, so I asked you to take them off. So that's how it is. Shen Jingxian and Xie Fei looked at each other. Shen Jingxian smiled a little embarrassedly, but Xie Fei was not embarrassed at all. She nodded with a look of understanding, and then observed the barrier he set up with great interest. She even reached out to touch it. Oh right, what is this thing you set up around us? Xie Fei asked curiously, Are you sure it won't be seen by the people outside? If there's a sound, will it be heard by others? Xiaochen broke out in a cold sweat. Sound? What sound do you want to make? However, of course he didn't dare to ask this, afraid that he would be accused of thinking too dirty. He quickly pointed to the barrier and continued to explain, As for this barrier, it has the effect of blocking vision. Other people can't see what's happening inside at all, so you don't have to worry about the problem of being exposed at all. The same goes for sound, people outside definitely can't hear it. Chapter 1226. Very good. Consort Xie smiled meaningfully and asked no more questions. She took the initiative to take off her clothes, apparently very trusting of Xiaochen. Shen Jingxian naturally didn't hesitate either. She took off her clothes with Consort Xie and placed them to the side. All right, we'll begin dual cultivation according to the steps I've mentioned. First, put your hands. Xiaochen directed the two girls to sit in a circle around him and then briefly explained the method of dual cultivation. The two girls were extremely intelligent and quick-witted people, so they quickly understood the essentials of dual cultivation. They followed Xiaochen's instructions and placed their palms on the other two's, closed their eyes, and immediately began to circulate their mental cultivation method and cultivate. Following the activation of the mental cultivation method, the venerable origin power within the barrier instantly surged and filled the entire seclusion area, releasing waves of suppressive might continuously. Outside the seclusion area, Hongzhu and the others couldn't help but take a few steps back when they saw the protective array suddenly light up with a white radiance. Presumably, Xiaochen's group had already begun cultivating. Hongzhu, who was originally tired and sleepy, should have seized the time to rest while Xiaochen and the others were cultivating. However, she was in no mood to do so. Instead, she kept staring at the three people sitting together in the seclusion area. Her heart was in a mess as she anxiously waited for the final result. For some reason, Hongzhu felt as if there were two little people fighting in her heart at this moment. It was extremely contradictory. On one hand, she felt that Xiaochen's method of breaking through was too simple. It looked just like an ordinary cultivation method, and there was nothing outstanding about it. What was the difference between this and her own cultivation method? How could he possibly break through? But on the other hand, Hongzhu really hoped that Xiaochen would succeed. After all, she had thought quite highly of Xiao Chen back in the secular world and felt that this fellow was a talent that could be molded. That was why she had used her authority to give Xiao Chen a lot of help back then. Hong Yan, Song Qingshu, and Hong Laosan all wore disdainful looks on their faces. They simply did not believe that Xiao Chen would be able to help Xin Jingxian and the others break through by relying on such a cultivation method, so they could only wait to see him make a fool of himself. Only Hong Zhu's heart was burning like a pot of boiling oil. About half an hour later, the light from the protective array of the seclusion site gradually dimmed. Hong Zhu and the others saw Xiao Chen slowly stand up with the help of the two girls, and then walk towards them with a smile on his face. What do you think? Have you all successfully broken through to the Venerable Realm? Before Xiao Chen and the others could walk out of the seclusion area, Hong Zhu asked in a trembling voice. She clenched her fists and felt that her palms were moist. It was obvious that they were soaked in sweat. Xiao Chen could naturally hear Hong Zhu's voice, but he did not answer. Instead, he smiled faintly and calmly removed the barrier around the seclusion site, as well as the illusions that Song Qingshu and the others had seen. Hong Zhu felt her vision blur for a moment, and in the next moment Xiao Chen, Xin Jingxian, and Xie Fei were already standing outside the seclusion site. Hong Zhu's heart was thumping wildly, and she thought that her vision had blurred because she was too nervous. Kid, I didn't know that you had some ability. To think that you actually succeeded. Song Qingshu raised his eyebrows slightly and said in a slightly surprised tone. As a cultivator, he could naturally sense the auras of the Venerable Realm coming from Xin Jingxian and Xie Fei. Song Qingshu, what did you just say? Did they succeed? Hong Zhu was startled. He abruptly turned his head and impatiently asked Song Qingshu. Hong Yan also looked surprised. She had not expected that this lecher would actually have some skills and had actually helped Xin Jingxian and the others break through. Little Hong Zhu, they have indeed successfully broken through to the Venerable Realm. It's your and Hong Yan's turn next. Song Qingshu nodded, then turned to look at Xiao Chen and indifferently asked, Actually, I'm very curious. How did you do it? Given your intelligence, it's very difficult for me to explain it to you, so you'd better not ask. Xiao Chen could not be bothered to talk nonsense with Song Qingshu, so he turned to Xin Jingxian and Xie Fei and said, The two of you have just broken through to the Venerable Realm, so you may not be very used to it yet. It's best for you to return to the seclusion site and consolidate your cultivation. After your breakthroughs, the pressure will not have much effect on you. The two girls nodded obediently, then returned to their original spot and sat down cross-legged. However, they did not circulate their mental cultivation techniques. Instead, they held hands and whispered to each other with sweet smiles on their faces. On one hand, they had just become Venerable Realm experts, so they were still a little excited. On the other hand, they were considering that Hong Zhu and Hong Yan might come to dual cultivate later. If they started circulating their mental cultivation techniques, the protective formation would be activated, so it was better to wait for a while and wait for them to come in before cultivating, lest they were interrupted halfway. Kid, don't be too arrogant. Do you think that you're so great just because you can help others break through to the Venerable Realm? If it weren't for the fact that you still have some value, I would have crippled you long ago. Song Qingshu snorted coldly, feeling a little embarrassed. In Song Qingshu's eyes, people like Xiao Chen who did not have any strength but liked to show off were simply arrogant people who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. Just because they had some tricks up their sleeves, they became arrogant. If Hong Zhu had not stopped him, he would have immediately given Xiao Chen a good beating. Alright, Song Qingshu, don't be so sarcastic and say less. Hong Zhu glared at Song Qingshu, then ran over to Xiao Chen and grabbed his hand. He smiled as he swayed back and forth. Little brother Xiao Chen, don't pay attention to Song Qingshu, that silly goose. He's just a block of wood and he doesn't know how to flirt at all. Hurry up and help me break through to the Venerable Realm. I can't wait any longer. Alright. For your sake, I won't bicker with that idiot surnamed Song. Xiao Chen flashed a victorious smile. He nonchalantly glanced at Song Qingshu, then turned around and left with Hong Zhu. Song Qingshu was so angry that his nose became crooked after being exposed by Hong Zhu on the spot. He wanted to mock Xiao Chen, but he was afraid that Xiao Chen would really not help Hong Zhu break through in a fit of anger. If that happened, this little girl would definitely blame it on him, so he simply turned his face away and pretended not to hear anything. Only his heaving chest showed how suffocated he was. Hong Laosan was originally on Song Qingshu's side, but after seeing that Xiao Chen had successfully helped Hong Zhu break through to the Venerable Realm, he became a little uncertain. After all, he did not have any grudges against Xiao Chen, so he did not have any preconceived animosity towards him. Seeing that they were arguing, Hong Laosan, who was not good with words to begin with, did not know which side to help. He could only secretly stand a little further away and pretend to be enjoying the scenery. However, Hong Laosan inadvertently saw that Hong Yan was standing alone at the side. Her expression was constantly changing, as if she was having an intense internal struggle. Xiao Chen had just taken a few steps with Hong Zhu when he suddenly thought of something. He stopped and asked, "Oh right, isn't your little sister going to break through as well? Why didn't she come with us?" Chapter 12:27. My little sister? You mean Hong Yan? Hong Zhu pursed his lips and deliberately raised his voice. Don't even mention her, she's very virtuous and virtuous. She might not even like you, you lecher, you scoundrel. Besides, she has that little lover of hers, Song Qingshu, accompanying her, so why would she care about you? She's probably already thrown the matter of breaking through to the highest heavens. After saying that, Hong Zhu turned his head and gave Hong Yan a provocative look, only to find that she was so angry that her face had turned purple. She was staring at him hatefully, but she couldn't say anything. Oh, you're right. Xiao Chen shrugged and didn't insist on inviting Hong Yan to cultivate with him. He suddenly thought that since dual cultivation required them to take off their clothes, it really wasn't very suitable to bring Hong Yan along, because he and Xin Jingxian had already met each other openly, and Xie Fei seemed to have a good impression of him. Since Jingxian wasn't against it, there wouldn't be any misgivings about dual cultivation. As for little Hong Zhu, this little girl seemed to be very indifferent to the feelings between men and women, so it wouldn't be so awkward during dual cultivation. But Hong Yan was different. He had heard from her that she had never married since she was young, so it seemed that she was indeed a rather virtuous little girl. If he asked her to cultivate with him, wouldn't she think that he was acting like a hooligan and scolded him harshly? Wouldn't that be asking for trouble? Back then, when Xiao Chen had only mentioned the matter of reading books, she hadn't been willing to do so. Although it wasn't impossible to insist on dual cultivation, everyone had their own aspirations and couldn't be forced. Xiao Chen felt that it was better not to take the initiative to find trouble with her. Wait. Seeing that Xiao Chen and Hong Zhu were walking further and further away, Hong Yan's angry and aggrieved expression gradually disappeared. She clenched her teeth and, as if she had made an important decision, suddenly shouted and chased after them. Hong Laosan, who was standing next to her, jumped in fright. Looking at Hong Yan's back, he suddenly came to a realization. So this girl was thinking about this just now. Hong Yan stopped in front of the two and raised her head to look at the surprised Xiao Chen and said, I've decided. I want to break through to the venerable realm with you. Xiao Chen, please take me with you. Her tone was hesitant at first, but as she spoke, her expression became more and more resolute. It seemed that she had already made up her mind. Oh, well. Xiao Chen rubbed his nose anxiously. He really didn't expect that Hong Yan would take the initiative to ask him for dual cultivation. What should he do? Hong Yan would definitely not be willing to take off her clothes in front of him. The key was that it was not convenient for him to tell her the cultivation method. Otherwise, wouldn't the misunderstanding be even more serious? Yo, Hong Yan, weren't you scolding Xiao Chen a while ago? Are you actually willing to cultivate with the person you hate the most in order to become a venerable one? It seems like you've finally become enlightened today. Hong Zhu rolled his eyes and mocked in a lukewarm voice. Elder sister, don't say such sarcastic words to provoke me. If it wasn't for the future of the Hong family, I would rather die than cultivate with Xiao Chen. Hong Yan's expression was solemn as she vowed solemnly. In Hong Yan's opinion, the orders of the family would always come first. Even if she were to cultivate with the person she hated the most, it would only last for an hour. She would just treat it as enduring for an hour. After that, they would have nothing to do with each other. Xiao Chen couldn't help but curse inwardly. I'm the one who's going to cultivate with you now, eldest Mississippi. Is it really okay for you to put on such a righteous and stern expression? Aren't you afraid that I'll reject you? Tiske Hong Yan, oh Hong Yan, you're so great that I'm almost moved to tears by you. You might as well go and participate in the Touching the Hong family's top 10 people. You'll definitely get first place. Hong Zhu clasped his hands together as if he was worshipping a saint. However, his expression and eyes were filled with disdain. You. Hong Yan was so angry that her face alternated between red and white. She opened her mouth but didn't know how to respond. She also knew that quarreling was her weakness and that she couldn't be compared to Hongzhu at all. Thus, she could only turn her head away and silently sulk. Alright. If you two sisters have any grudges, you can slowly quarrel when you get home. Don't quarrel here and waste everyone's time. Xiaoqun helplessly shook his head. Soon after, he solemnly warned Hong Yan, I'll only warn you once. My method of breaking through is rather special. I hope that you'll be mentally prepared. Don't give up halfway and blame me later. Isn't it all because of you? Before Hong Yan could speak, Hongzhu muttered in a low voice. What did you say? Xiaoqun was standing right next to Hongzhu, so he naturally heard what Hong Yan had said. However, before he could ask, Hong Yan immediately nodded and resolutely replied, Don't worry, I've already prepared myself. No matter how much pain I have to endure, I can handle it. I absolutely won't regret it. In fact, the naive Hong Yan didn't notice the hidden meaning behind Xiaoqun's words. She thought that Xiaoqun was afraid that she wouldn't be able to bear the pressure and deliberately gave her such a warning, so she was a little dissatisfied. This kid is looking down on me too much. Isn't it just a short period of suffering? Does he really think that I'm a flower in a greenhouse who hasn't suffered before? And he didn't even tell Hongzhu about it, but me. He's really looking down on me? Naturally, Xiaoqun didn't know what Hong Yan was thinking. Seeing that both parties had no objections, he didn't say anything else. Instead, he led the two women to the center of the seclusion area and arranged for them to sit next to Xinjingxian and Xiafei. Then he used a concealment technique to confuse Song Qingshu and third young master Hong, and casually set up a barrier. The area of the seclusion area was quite large. Initially, Xiaoqun wanted to bring Hongzhu and Xiafei to another corner to cultivate so that Xinjingxian and Xiafei could consolidate their cultivation alone. However, he also considered that the seclusion area would emit a pressure when he was about to break through to the martial honor realm. Moreover, Xinjingxian and Xiafei were consolidating their cultivation, so it wouldn't be good if they were affected. Thus, in the end, he decided to just sit together. If they encountered any trouble, he could solve it together. What's this? Hongzhu looked at the barrier that suddenly appeared in surprise and asked with a puzzled expression. Xiaoqun, I was watching you guys cultivating outside the seclusion area just now, but I don't think you guys used this thing to block it? Why is it blocking Hong Yan and I when it's our turn to cultivate? Don't tell me you're plotting something? Hong Yan was also very shocked. She reached out to touch the barrier beside her and found that it was very cold to the touch. Furthermore, it felt quite sturdy, and probably not even an ordinary person could break it. She had the same question as Hongzhu, and since Hong Yan didn't have a good impression of Xiaoqun to begin with, she looked warily at Xiaoqun and waited for him to give her an explanation. Chapter 12:28. Oh, it's like this. Actually, I had also used this barrier just now, but I used a little trick in advance so that you couldn't see what was going on inside, so you could only see what I showed you. Xiaoqun took off his coat and explained, as for this barrier, it's to prevent you from exposing yourselves. It's much easier this way as I can't control so many people at the same time. I still don't quite understand. Why can't we let others watch us cultivate? Are you going to use some trick? Hongzhu looked at Xiaoqun in surprise and asked the question in her mind. Also, what is your current strength? How did you manage to create such a powerful thing? Hongzhu felt that Xiaoqun was becoming more and more unfathomable. He could actually control venerable experts like Song Qingshu and Hong San so easily. Wasn't this a little too terrifying? Was this still the young and inexperienced boy she knew back then? Junior sister Hongzhu, didn't I tell you before? Xiaoqun is a very powerful special ability user. Not only can he control other people's minds, he can also easily make them lose their footing. Doing these things is like playing a game to him. As for the function of this barrier. At this point, Xiafei deliberately paused to keep Hongzhu and Hong Yan in suspense, all so that she could see Hongzhu and Hong Yan's reactions. Although Hongzhu and Hong Yan were in conflict with each other, their reactions were particularly identical at this moment. Both of their mouths were slightly agape with looks of disbelief on their faces. On one hand, they felt that what Xiafei had said was a fantasy story, but on the other hand, the barrier beside them was telling them that it was indeed true. Xiafei looked at the astonished expressions on the two girls' faces with satisfaction, then smiled faintly and continued, in fact, it's very simple. Xiaoqun wants to help us break through to the venerable realm, and the method he's using is male and female dual cultivation. Dual cultivation. Hong Yan and Hongzhu exclaimed in unison. Hongzhu's voice was slightly trembling. But Hong Yan's face immediately turned pale, and not a single trace of blood could be seen on her face. Yes, dual cultivation. CFA nodded and said slowly, in other words, he uses the method of balancing yin and yang to speed up the process of breaking through to the martial honor realm. He makes use of Xiao Chen's superb strength to help us resist the pressure during the breakthrough and successfully advance. Alright, I've explained everything. I'm sure you know what to do next, right? Hong Yan's legs went soft, and she almost stumbled and fell to the ground. Although she didn't like to talk about the matters between men and women, she had read that taboo novel. Dual cultivation? Didn't the so-called dual cultivation mean that a man and a woman had to do that kind of thing? Sister Xiaofei, you said that on purpose, didn't you? Hong Yan still had some hope in her heart. She asked carefully, actually, you didn't rely on dual cultivation to break through just now. You used other methods, right? What do you think? Xiaofei did not answer directly. Instead, she stretched out her hand and flipped the hair on her temples. She posed in a charming posture and asked in a lazy voice. Hong Yan's mouth was half open. Her mind felt like it was going to explode. She had no idea what to do. Am I going to lose the innocence that I've guarded for so many years? But if I don't participate, I won't be able to break through. If I don't break through, I won't be able to help my family participate in the sacrificial ceremony and open the door to the cultivation world. But for the future of my family, am I going to make such a huge sacrifice? In the midst of her chaotic thoughts, the scene before the three of them entered seclusion flashed across Hong Yan's mind. At that time, Xiao Chen had warned her that the method of breaking through was rather special so that she could be mentally prepared. She never thought that this was what he meant. Heavens, Xiao Chen, you damned lecher. You scoundrel. Why didn't you say so earlier? If he had clearly said that only a man and a woman could successfully break through to the martial honor realm through dual cultivation, I would rather die than come here. What should I do now? Could it be that he had to refuse again? Hong Yan's mind was in a whirl. She couldn't help but turn her gaze to Hong Zhu, wanting to see what her big sister was going to do. Hong Zhu and Hong Yan were also thinking the same thing. It turned out that the so-called special cultivation method was a man and a woman performing the ritual of dual cultivation. No wonder Xiao Chen had started taking off his outer clothes right after he finished setting up the barrier. Xiao Chen, you were as pure and innocent as a little fresh meat when you were in the secular world. I didn't think that you would still be interested in us sisters. Although Hong Zhu was a little nervous, he still teased Xiao Chen out of habit. Then why didn't you make a move at the pharmacy? It's just dual cultivation. How did it become me being interested in you too? Xiao Chen shook his head helplessly. This Hong Zhu was still the same, always teasing him whenever he saw him. It was like this in the secular world and it was still the same in the martial honor realm. If you weren't interested, why would you want to dual cultivate with us? Hong Zhu curled his lips, twirling a strand of hair in his hand as he said sourly, it's not that I want to criticize you, but if you want to take advantage of us, I'll let you take advantage of us, but you're actually so greedy that you want to take both of us sisters? Xiao Chen was a little dumbfounded. Since when did I want to take them? Weren't you two the ones who came up to me? When did I? Xiao Chen was about to protest when Hong Yan suddenly shouted angrily, Big sister. Why are you so surprised? You almost scared me out of my wits. Hong Zhu rolled his eyes at Hong Yan and said snappily, Big sister, can you be a little more serious? Hong Yan stamped her feet and glared at Xiao Chen with shame and anger, gnashing her teeth and saying, I really shouldn't have asked you to sympathize with him. I didn't expect him to be such a bad person, falling in love with every woman he sees. I shouldn't have sold the herbs to him. Forget it. If I hadn't met Xiao Chen back then, would he have helped us break through today? Stop being so regretful and think about whether or not you want to dual cultivate with us. Hong Zhu felt a little helpless towards his little sister. What kind of situation was this? Why was she still thinking about the past? Hong Yan's face alternated between green and white. She was supposed to sacrifice her body for the sake of breaking through, and it was even more so for the hateful Xiao Chen. How could that be possible? But if she refused, she might not be able to help the clan anymore. Even though Hong Zhu looked like he didn't care on the surface and even teased Xiao Chen a little, he still felt a little regretful in his heart. If he had known this would happen, he would have asked Xiao Chen about the method to help him break through first. Now he had fallen into a dilemma. He couldn't just leave without becoming a venerable, right? How was he going to explain this to Song Qingshu? After all, Xin Jingxian and CFA had successfully broken through, so why couldn't he and Hong Yan do the same? Chapter 1229. Hongzhu was worried. If they really left the way they came in, Song Qingshu might really do something irrational in a fit of rage. He was already a little disgusted with Xiaoqin to begin with, so he was even less likely to let them off so easily. Turning to look at Xiafei and Xin Jingxian, Hongzhu saw that both of them had a matter-of-fact expression on their faces. It seemed that the two of them had only broken through after doing it with Xiaoqin. Thinking about it, these two women were no longer virgins, so they must have been together with Xiaoqin in the past, so there shouldn't be any problems with dual cultivation now. But he and Hong Yan were both virgins. How could they wait virgins? This method seems to be a little problematic. Hongzhu suddenly thought of an important matter and said with a frown, "This method seems a little problematic." What's the problem? Junior sister Hongzhu, I think it's normal that Hong Yan is unwilling, but why can't you cast aside your worldly views? Xiafei looked at Hongzhu in surprise. Wasn't it just taking off her clothes? It was quite easy just now, so why did it seem like it was a matter of life and death in the blink of an eye? Hongzhu bit his lower lip and frowned as he voiced his doubts. Forgive me for being presumptuous, senior sister Xiaofei, but you and Xin Jingxian have already done it with Xiaoqin, so there shouldn't be any problems with this dual cultivation method. But I am still virgin, so if I do it, it might affect the spiritual energy in my body? That's right. Hong Yan's body trembled as if she had suddenly seen the light of dawn. Summoning up her courage, she hurriedly added, "The amount of spiritual energy is very important, and the clan has repeatedly warned us not to reveal it, so, ha 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 ha." After hearing Hongzhu's words, Xiafei was stunned for a while. It was only when Hong Yan added that she suddenly burst into a peal of laughter that sounded like silver bells. She laughed while clutching her stomach, her entire body almost bending to the ground. Xiaoqin raised his head and looked at the sky. He was speechless. What were these two girls thinking? Who said that dual cultivation meant doing bad things? Just a moment ago, he had been wondering why Hongzhu also had a look of resistance on his face, but now, he understood the ins and outs of the situation. I'm dying of laughter. My stomach hurts. Xiafei laughed for a long time and almost cried. She patted Xin Jingxian's shoulder and asked her to explain. Xin Jingxian helplessly shook her head. She looked at Hongzhu and Hong Yan, who were both stunned and confused, and gently explained, "You've misunderstood. Imperial concubine Xia didn't make it clear just now. When she said dual cultivation, you don't need to hurt your bodies. All you need to do is take off your clothes, put your palms against each other's, and circulate your mental cultivation technique and cultivate normally. Haven't you seen the legendary Condor heroes? Oh, so that's how it is." Hongzhu finally understood why Imperial concubine Xia was smiling and couldn't help feeling a little embarrassed. Knowing that she didn't need to offer up her chastity, she secretly breathed a sigh of relief, but there was also a little disappointment in her heart. "Sigh, it would be better to really prove my innocence this time. This way, I won't have to participate in the sacrificial ceremony." In the end, he didn't expect that he was thinking too much. "Actually, you don't need to take off your clothes." Xiaoqin suddenly spoke and added, "However, when you make a breakthrough, the powerful impact will shatter all your clothes. After all, dual cultivation between a man and a woman is different from ordinary cultivation, and it's also because of this that you can quickly break through to the venerable realm. If you bring a change of clothes, you can ask Imperial concubine Xia to help you carry them, and you can change into a new one if your clothes are torn." Hongzhu and Hong Yan looked at each other. In order to catch up with the opening of the venerable realm, Hongzhu had rushed from the secular world to the inner martial world, and then from the Hong clan to the venerable realm in a hurry. He didn't even have time to pack his luggage, so where would he get a change of clothes? Hong Yan naturally didn't bring any clothes, and now she was even more conflicted. This lecher Xiaoqin couldn't have made such a request just to see their naked bodies, right? Seeing the awkward expressions on the two women's faces, and that they didn't immediately respond, Xiaoqin wasn't in a hurry. He indifferently said, "Think about it again. If you think it through and think that it's really unacceptable, then go out like this. If Song Qingshu and the others ask, just say that you failed to break through. It's not a big deal." In any case, Xiaoqin wasn't really interested in the two women's bodies. If they were shy and unwilling, Xiaoqin wouldn't mind. After all, he wasn't the one who was going to break through to the venerable realm. Hearing Xiaoqin's words, Hong Yan was slightly taken aback. and looked at him in disbelief. Logically speaking, a pervert like Xiao Qin should really want to see her body. Why did he suddenly change his mind? Does this guy have some other scheme up his sleeve? Is he trying to advance by taking a step back? There's no need to think about it. I agree to this dual cultivation method. Just as Hong Yan's mind was filled with all kinds of fantasies, Hong Zhu suddenly agreed. She even cast a seductive glance at Xiao Chen and said with a smile, I was accidentally possessed by my younger sister's soul just now. Actually, Xiao Chen, if you still want to take a step further, I can also consider it. Cough cough, there's no need. You just need to take off your clothes and sit cross-legged. Xiao Chen inwardly shook his head. This girl is really too much. She knows that she doesn't need to show her innocence and she's already starting to tease me again. However, from another perspective, Xiao Chen quite admired Hongzhu. This showed that she was only teasing him like this because she cultivated seduction techniques. Her heart was actually very pure and conservative, and she wouldn't mess around with just any man. Boring. Hongzhu didn't continue and even joked, your two girlfriends are here, so I'd better not seduce you. Otherwise they'll skin me alive later. Let's begin. After saying that, Hongzhu very nimbly took off her clothes. Although her face was red, she still calmly stood in front of everyone. Big sister. What are you doing? Hurry up and put your clothes back on. Hong Yan didn't expect Hongzhu to suddenly do this and was caught off guard. She was greatly startled and hastily picked up her clothes from the ground and hurriedly covered several important parts of her body with them. What's the big deal? I'm just taking off my clothes. Hongzhu resolutely waved her hand and gently pushed Hong Yan away. He then indifferently said, Hong Yan, if you really don't want to dual cultivate, then you can leave. I've longed for the strength of a venerable for a very long time. After saying that, Hongzhu took off her clothes and threw them to the side. He took a deep breath and said, Xiao Qin, let's hurry up and begin. Don't waste any more time. Chapter 1230. The reason why Hongzhu had made up her mind to do this was because she desperately wanted to become a supremacy. There was not a day that went by that she did not wish to break free from the Hong family's control, escape to the secular world, and live the kind of free life that she loved. In order to realize her wish, what was the big deal about taking off a few pieces of clothing? Moreover, although Hongzhu did not really like Xiao Qin, she did not dislike him either. She could still keep her chastity, and all she needed to do was take off her clothes in front of him. Hongzhu naturally would not feel any resistance. If it were any other man, Hongzhu would not even consider dual cultivation, but Xiao Qin was an exception. He was the only man that she could relax her guard against, and she did not have to worry that he would try anything funny. Besides, Hongzhu really did not want to go out just like this. If she told Song Qingshu that she had failed to break through, he would definitely cause trouble for Xiao Qin. She did not want to make Xiao Qin take the blame for her own reasons. However, to Hongzhu's surprise, Xiao Qin did not stare at her body. Instead, he turned his head and calmly said, Hong Yan, I have already opened a small door in the barrier behind you. You can go out from there. Otherwise, if you stay here, you will hinder our dual cultivation. I won't go out. To everyone's surprise, Hong Yan shook her head in an extremely determined manner. Biting her lower lip, she pulled Hongzhu to her side and pleaded, Big sister, Xiao Qin definitely has other ways to help us break through. If he is not willing, then we should at least go out together. You are my blood sister, how can I let you stay here alone? What if Xiao Qin? Xiao Qin, closed that little door. Before Hong Yan could finish, Hongzhu had already pulled her hand away and shouted impatiently, Xiao Qin, close that little door. Okay. Xiao Qin was stunned for a moment. He raised his hand slightly, and the entire barrier became seamless again. Big sis, what are you doing? Before Hong Yan could react, Hongzhu had already reached out and started unbuttoning her clothes. While doing so, he coldly said, Since you don't want to go out, then don't waste your breath. Stay here and accompany me and Xiao Qin in dual cultivation. What are you wasting your breath for? I don't have time to listen to you. Hong Yan was completely dumbfounded. It was only when Hongzhu took off her jacket that she came to her senses. She jumped 3 feet high and screamed, Ah! Sister, how could you do this? Quickly stop. Haha, little sister Hong Yan, don't be so stubborn. At this time, CFA also stood up and came over. She said with a smile, Where can you find a good man like Xiao Qin? In any case, since it has come to this, you might as well become his wife with us. In the future the four of us can even play mahjong together. As she rambled on, CFA stretched out one hand and hugged Hong Yan's legs while skillfully unbuttoning her pants with her other hand. Big sis Xiaofei, you, how could you do this? Hong Yan was both angry and anxious. She was not as strong as CFA, so she could not break free no matter how hard she tried. Tears welled up in her eyes as she sobbed. CFA ignored her and continued to help Hong Zhu take off Hong Yan's clothes. Hong Yan could only watch helplessly as the clothes and pants on her body were gradually taken off. Finally she couldn't take it anymore and burst into tears. She cried like a pear blossom in the rain. Xiaoqin, don't you think CFA and Hong Zhu have gone a little too far? This is not right. How can we force others? You should hurry up and persuade them. Xin Jingxian frowned and said disapprovingly. Although Xin Jingxian did not particularly care about how many girlfriends Xiaoqin had, the premise was that one must sincerely like Xiaoqin. CFA's use of such a forceful method was really too much. Little Hong Zhu, CFA, since Hong Yan is not willing. Seeing Hong Yan crying like that, Xiaoqin also felt a little sorry for her. He nodded and was about to dissuade her, but before he could finish his words, Hong Yan's clothes had all been taken off, and Hong Zhu and CFA had even taken them far away, making it impossible for them to get back. Whoa, big sis CFA, why are you doing this? You are all bullying me. Hong Yan squatted on the ground and cried in a very aggrieved manner. She even tried to cover several important parts of her body with her hands. Because she had been sobbing all this time, her body was still trembling non-stop, which made her look pitiful and tempting. Although it was only a few seconds, Xiaoqin still accidentally saw some things that he should not have seen. He hurriedly looked away, closed his eyes and said with some guilt, Hong Yan, don't blame your big sister and CFA. It's all my fault. I didn't explain the situation clearly in advance, which led to this embarrassing situation. But don't worry, I will take responsibility for you. Whoa, I don't want you to take responsibility for me. Hearing Xiaoqian's apology, Hong Yan cried even louder. It's all because of you that I ended up like this. You lecher, pervert, scoundrel, you're just crying like a cat crying like a mouse, you're just pretending to be compassionate. The more Hong Yan spoke, the angrier she became. She could not help but raise her head and glare fiercely at Xiaoqin. But when she glared at him, she was surprised to find that Xiaoqin had his eyes closed all this time. He was not looking at her lecherously as she had expected. Even so, Hong Yan's hatred towards Xiaoqin did not diminish in the slightest. If this scoundrel had not appeared at the pharmacy, her relationship with Hong Zhu would not have been so stiff. If this scoundrel had not suddenly offered to help them break through to the martial venerable realm, she would not have to suffer such humiliation here. Even if you close your eyes now, as if to say that you don't have any improper thoughts about me, I still won't believe you. Hong Yan thought hatefully as tears fell from her eyes. Xiaoqin, ignore her. She's just being unreasonable and asking for a beating. Hong Zhu changed his charming and seductive image and straightforwardly threw Hong Yan's clothes to the side. Then he walked over and urged, let's hurry up and do dual cultivation. If we don't start now, Song Qingshu and Hong San will very likely become suspicious. CFA also nodded and echoed, yes, you've been here for so long, but the seclusion site's protective measures have not been activated. If they find it strange and come in to investigate, it will be troublesome. Although Hong Zhu had never done dual cultivation before, he had heard of how it should be done. So, regardless of whether Hong Yan agreed or not, he grabbed her arm and pulled her up. Chapter 1231. CFA also walked over and pulled Hong Yan over to Xiaoqian's side. She arranged for Hong Zhu and Hong Yan to sit on either side of Xiaoqian, then pulled the somewhat dissatisfied Xin Jingxian over as well. The three of them sat in a circle. Although Xin Jingxian did not quite agree with Hong Zhu and CFA's approach, it was not appropriate for her to raise any objections at the moment. She had no choice but to helplessly take off her clothes with CFA and place their hands together. Xin Jingxian placed her left hand on Hong Yan's right palm, while her right hand was placed on CFA's. Hong Zhu was on CFA's side, while Xiaoqin was on Hong Zhu's side. And, let's begin. Although Xiaoqin did not open his eyes, his divine sense and mental energy were able to clearly perceive the movements of the people inside the barrier. Seeing that Hong Zhu and CFA were so determined, Xiaoqin did not forcibly stop them. After all, he only wanted to cooperate with them in their dual cultivation and would not do anything outrageous. Seeing that everyone was already seated, Xiaoqin quickly took off his clothes and placed one hand on Hongzhu's palm while extending the other. However, even after waiting for a long time, he still did not feel Hong Yan's hand reaching out to him. As such, it was not appropriate for him to open his eyes and could only helplessly frown. Hongzhu had naturally also noticed the situation. Seeing that Hong Yan was still clutching her chest with her hands, as if she had been frightened and refused to let go, Hongzhu impatiently said, "Hong Yan, if you really don't want to cultivate, then go ahead and cover it up. When Song Qingshu and the others arrive, I'll ask Xiaoqin to remove the barrier and let them see as much as they want. You can decide for yourself." You. Recalling that scene, Hong Yan pursed her lips and nearly burst into tears again, but she managed to restrain herself with great difficulty. After looking around, Hong Yan saw that besides Xiaoqin, who still had his eyes closed, Hongzhu and Xie Fei were staring at her coldly, while Xin Jingxian was shaking her head in sympathy and helplessness. She gritted her teeth and struggled fiercely in her heart for a while, but finally made up her mind. She tremblingly stretched out her hand and placed it on Xiaoqin's palm. When Xiaoqin sensed that the palms of the 5 people had touched each other, he said, "All right, you should first get rid of the distracting thoughts in your minds. Once you've calmed down, you can begin to circulate your mental cultivation technique." The others quickly entered a state of mind. However, Xiaoqin could sense that Hong Yan's thoughts were still not very calm, so her mental cultivation method was not circulating smoothly. Her cultivation was also somewhat sluggish, so he stealthily channeled a sliver of essence into her body without batting an eyelid, helping her calm down the uneasy emotions in her heart. After a while, Hong Yan gradually calmed down. Moreover, the speed at which she circulated her mental cultivation method became faster and smoother. Even she herself was a little surprised. She had no idea why this was happening. However, she couldn't care so much at this time. She wholeheartedly immersed herself in cultivation. However, Xiaoqin didn't notice that the person he was supposed to cultivate with was currently staring straight at his body with her eyes wide open. Her face was flushed, and she would let out a low moan from time to time, as if she was extremely thirsty. Second brother Song, I think something's wrong. Outside the seclusion area, third young Master Hong waited for a long time, but he still didn't see the white light of the protective array. He couldn't help but say worriedly, Hongzhu and Hong Yan have been in there for so long, why haven't they started cultivating yet? Don't tell me that brat called. Xiaoqin wants to play some tricks? I don't think he would dare to do that unless he doesn't want to live anymore. Song Qingshu had just snorted when he saw a faint white light gradually illuminate the seclusion area. Third young Master Hong was overjoyed. He pointed at the white light and exclaimed happily, "It's lit up, it's lit up." Second brother Song, you're right. I was worrying too much. This Xiaoqin is still reliable. However, Song Qingshu didn't look happy at all. Instead, he frowned and pondered for a while, then said coldly, after Hongzhu and Hong Yan successfully break through to the supremacy realm, we must first find out what method that kid used to help them break through successfully. Once we know the inside story, we'll find a chance to get rid of him. This kind of person is too big of a threat to our cultivation sex. What? It can't be, right? Third young Master Hong was shocked at first. Then he pinched his chin and pondered for a while. He shook his head disapprovingly and said, even if you want to get rid of Xiaoqin, I don't think little Hongzhu will agree. Moreover, since that kid can help others break through to the supremacy realm so easily, he must have something extraordinary about him. If we can convince him to work for us, it'll actually be pretty good. In fact, third young Master Hong valued Xiaoqin's ability, especially his ability to help others break through to the supremacy realm. It was an extremely rare ability. He was a rare talent. Although the supremacy realm was opened every year and there was an endless stream of people coming to challenge it, there weren't many people who could successfully break through. No, it should be said that there were very few people who could. The reason was very simple. There were very few secluded cultivation spots in the supremacy realm to begin with. Everyone would have to expend a lot of effort just to fight for them. Even if they managed to snatch one, the pressure from the supremacy realm's origin force would make them feel helpless. After enduring the pressure, it was still a problem whether they could comprehend the meaning of breaking through. Therefore, supremacies were still extremely rare in the martial arts world. In every sect, supremacies were the leaders. If they had Xiaoqin's help, the success rate of the disciples who entered the supremacy realm would be greatly increased. Wouldn't that greatly increase the strength of the Immortal Cultivation sect? When facing the Ghost Cultivation sect, they wouldn't have to be restrained anymore. Third young Master Hong, you're too naive. Song Qingshu poured a bucket of cold water on him mercilessly. With Xiao Chen's eccentric personality, he definitely wouldn't be willing to submit to others. Don't think that you can recruit him to our side. Besides, if the other sects in the martial arts world discover this secret, such as our sworn enemy, the Ghost Cultivation sect, we'll be in big trouble. In fact, Song Qingshu was also quite curious about Xiao Chen's ability. However, he felt that since this kid had already used this ability to help Hongzhu and the others break through, they should have learned it too. In that case, Xiao Chen wasn't important anymore. Well, according to what you said, it makes sense. Then let's wait for them to come out and act according to the circumstances. If it really doesn't work, we'll ask Xiao Chen to go back first and decide what to do after he returns home. Third young Master Hong nodded slightly and agreed with Song Qingshu. Although third young Master Hong cherished talents, compared to the safety of the Immortal Cultivation sect, the safety of the entire sect was naturally more important. If Xiao Chen couldn't be used by the Immortal Cultivation sect, then it was better not to leave him in front of others. Chapter 1232. Although the two people outside were whispering to each other and discussing countermeasures, Xiao Chen, who was in seclusion, had no idea what they were planning. This was because he had just successfully helped Hongzhu and Hong Yan break through to the martial honor stage. At the same time, he was surprised to discover that after 2 rounds of dual cultivation, his cultivation had actually reached the nascent soul stage. When he helped Xin Jingshan and Xie Fei break through, Xiao Chen had already broken through from the 7th level of the nascent soul stage to the 9th level of the nascent soul stage. That feeling was extremely wonderful. He did not expect that he would jump 2 levels in a row. Xiao Chen could even faintly touch the barrier of the next stage. Xiao Chen, I found that there is something wrong with you. As Xiao Chen was feeling the changes in his strength, Elder Heaven Ancestor suddenly said in his sea of consciousness. Ah, it can't be? Elder Heaven Ancestor, don't scare me. Is it because I have leveled up too fast that there is something abnormal in my body? After hearing what Elder Heaven Ancestor said, Xiao Chen's heart suddenly tightened. He hurriedly used Yuan Qi to look at his dantian and meridians. In the end, after a round of inspection, he did not find anything wrong. He suddenly felt a little puzzled. I'm not too sure. But as far as I know, even with the dual cultivation method, it is impossible for a person to level up so many times in a short period of time. And you are now almost at the profound ascension stage. This kind of explosive growth is simply incredible. Elder Heaven Ancestor shook his head and was so surprised that he could not close his mouth. So the next level is the profound ascension stage. Does that mean I can learn an even more powerful skill? Tell me quickly. Xiao Chen nodded and shrugged his shoulders. He did not feel that there was anything strange about Elder Heaven Ancestor's amazement. Anyway, his own cultivation speed had always been almost the same as riding a rocket. He had long been used to it. Well, let's wait until you really break through to the profound ascension stage. Your leveling speed is really too fast. I have to check the heaven seizing fortune battle art first. If I find any problems, I'll let you know later. The Elder Heaven Ancestor then added, how strange. This kid's cultivation is almost catching up to mine. Isn't it just cultivating against the flow? How can he be so awesome? Hearing the Elder Heaven Ancestor's mutterings, Xiao Chen shook his head helplessly. It seemed that the Elder Heaven Ancestor did not discover any problems, but was surprised because Xiao Chen's cultivation speed was too fast, about to surpass the Elder Heaven Ancestor's speed in the past. Elder Sky did not say anything else, so Xiao Chen collected his thoughts. He did not immediately stop circulating his mental cultivation method. Instead, he continued to dual cultivate with the girls until all 4 of them had consolidated their martial supremacy cultivation base. Only then did he slowly exhale and stop cultivating. He closed his eyes and focused his mind. Feeling that the pressure around her gradually weakened, Hong Yan immediately let go of Xiao Chen's hand, fearing that he would open his eyes at any time. She quickly turned around, picked up her clothes and put them on. With her back facing Xiao Chen, Hong Yan secretly wiped away the tears on her face, and then stood there silently, not knowing what to say for a while. Although Xiao Chen did not open his eyes before and after the cultivation, Hong Yan's disgust for Xiao Chen still did not decrease. The idea that Xiao Chen was a lecher had always been deeply rooted in her mind. But now, this big lecher had helped her break through to the venerable realm and had become her benefactor. Hong Yan did not know how she should treat him. Hong Zhu did not hurry to put on his clothes, but instead stared at his hands, feeling the surging power in his body, his heart filled with joy. He had finally become a venerable expert. His long-cherished wish of many years had finally been fulfilled. Next, he would find a chance to escape from the Hong family, then hide from Grandfather Patriarch's eyes and ears, quietly live in seclusion in the secular world, and live a carefree life. Little brother Xiao Qin, thank you so much for your help this time. I don't know how to thank you. How about big sister here dedicates my life to you? In any case, you've always been fantasizing about me, so how about I stay by your side from now on and serve you well? Hong Zhu's eyes turned and she moved closer to Xiao Qin, speaking in a seductive voice. Hong Zhu really did not make such a suggestion because she wanted to thank Xiao Qin. She was thinking that after she escaped from the Hong family, if she could make use of Xiao Qin's connections in the secular world, she might be able to find a good place to hide. In any case, this kid was very clever and had many tricks up his sleeves. He would definitely be able to help her. Oh, there's no need for that. You should put on your clothes first. Xiao Qin sensed someone approaching him and smelled the fragrance of a woman's body. His heart moved slightly and he subconsciously stepped back. Are you for real? You wouldn't dislike me, would you? Hong Zhu was startled and immediately put on a heartbroken expression. She clasped her heart and said, "Back then you and I were so lovey-dovey, so tender and sweet. If I couldn't see you for even a day, I would think of you day and night. Now, it's only been a year and you're actually saying that I'm old and withered. Stop messing around. When did we become lovey-dovey? Be careful or I'll sue you for slander." Xiao Qin's head was about to explode. Goddess Shun was still listening on the side, so he could not let others misunderstand. Without waiting for Hong Zhu to speak again, Xiao Qin helplessly spread out his hands and said, "All right, Hong Zhu, don't think too much about it. This is just a small matter, so you don't need to be too touched. Just treat it as me repaying you for taking Xin Jingshen to cultivate and taking good care of her this year." It was not that Xiao Qin wanted to play the part of a gentleman, but he had never felt particularly strongly about Hong Zhu, and only saw her as a friend. Besides, if this invincible little demoness really got together with him, wouldn't she eat him up? He wouldn't be able to bear it. Aya, don't be in such a hurry to refuse. It's not too late to think about it first. Although Hong Zhu had been rejected, she did not take it to heart. She covered her mouth and giggled a few times, then picked up the clothes on the ground and put them on. Xin Jingshen was both angry and amused at this scene and she shook her head. Fortunately, she had been with Hong Zhu for a long time, so she already understood her temperament. Otherwise, if it was her in the past, she might really have misunderstood. After Hong Zhu finished putting on her clothes, she turned around and saw that Hong Yan was still silently standing to the side. Her face immediately sank and she coldly said, "Hong Yan, Xiao Qin spent so much effort to help us break through to the martial honor realm, but you didn't even say a word of thanks. You're really shameless." Thank you, Xiao Qin." Hong Yan trembled and stammered, but her tone did not sound sincere at all. Instead, there was a trace of resentment. Moreover, her back was still facing Xiao Qin and she did not turn around. Chapter 1233. It's fine, don't listen to your sister's nonsense. It's just a slight effort, it didn't take much effort. Xiao Qin waved his hand. When he sensed that Hong Zhu had already put on his clothes, he opened his eyes and indifferently said, "All right, since you've all consolidated your cultivation, my task is complete. Let's go out now." Before Xiao Qin could finish speaking, he suddenly felt someone hugging him tightly from behind. Their soft and warm skin pressed against each other. It was as if he could feel the blood pulsing under that layer of skin. It was lively and full of life. Before Xiao Qin could react, an enchanting voice resounded in his ears. "Great White Fox, don't be in such a hurry to go out. Why don't we take advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to have some fun and enjoy the pleasures between a man and a woman so that we don't waste this beautiful scenery? What do you think?" Xiao Qin didn't need to turn his head to know from the voice that the person behind him was undoubtedly Xie Fei. He closed his eyes again, trying his best to ignore the rich fragrance of a woman and the soft feeling of her delicate body pressed against his. He calmly said, "Xie Fei, do you know what you're saying?" When he was helping Hong Zhu and Hong Yan make breakthroughs, Xiao Chen had already noticed that Xia Fei, who was sitting across from him, was a little absent-minded. Instead of consolidating her cultivation, her mind was filled with all sorts of nonsense. Fortunately, Xia Fei had already broken through to the supremacy realm, so she wouldn't be in any danger. Under the influence of others, she didn't suffer any cultivation deviation. Xiao Chen had thought that everything would be fine after she finished her cultivation, so he didn't expect her to do something even more exaggerated. Shen Jingxian and Hong Zhu were a little dumbfounded when they saw Xia Fei leaning against Xiao Chen, not knowing how to react. Even Hong Yan, who had her back to Xiao Chen, turned her head slightly to see what was going on. "Oh, great white fox, don't be so cold to me." Xia Fei pouted and hugged Xiao Chen even tighter as she muttered, "I've already come to you on my own accord, can't you at least comfort me? Besides, you won't lose out in this kind of thing, so what's the big deal?" Xia Fei's eyes were misty as she leaned on Xiao Chen's broad and strong back. Feeling the strong masculine scent on his body, she became even more mesmerized. She couldn't help but stretch out her hand and continuously caress his pectoral muscles. Furthermore, her hand was gradually moving downwards. Xiao Chen's body stiffened. He did not dare to pull concubine Xia down, nor did he dare to respond. His relationship with concubine Xia had never been close. Today, when she suddenly said that she wanted to serve him with Shen Jingxian, Xiao Chen was already a little surprised. Now that this had happened, he really did not know what to do. In desperation, he could only look at the other women for help. "Consort Xia, how could you do this? Even if you like Xiao Chen, you can't do such a thing in front of Hong Zhu and Hong Yan. This is wrong. Hurry up and stop." When Shen Jingxian felt Xiao Chen's gaze, she shuddered and immediately shouted to stop him. Although she was not averse to such matters between men and women, it should also be done on different occasions. She wanted to be with Xiao Chen in front of unrelated people, wasn't that just giving them a free show? "That's right, senior sister Xiao Fei. You don't act recklessly." Hong Zhu was also startled. Looking at concubine Xia's appearance, he suddenly thought of something and frowned. "It's over, concubine Xia's illness is acting up." "Acting up? What illness?" "Hong Zhu, hurry up and explain. How can we save her? If it goes on like this." Shen Jingxian was taken aback. She immediately pulled Hong Zhu and asked. Originally, Shen Jingxian was a little dissatisfied with concubine Xia's desire, but now that she knew that concubine Xia's illness was acting up, all that was left in her heart was anxiety and worry. All she could think of was how to cure concubine Xia. This was the innate kindness of Shen Jingxian. Hong Zhu wanted to say something but hesitated. Seeing that concubine Xia's actions were becoming more and more intense, he could only look at Xiao Chen and say with some embarrassment, "Xiao Chen, you quickly think of a way." When senior sister Xiao Fei first started cultivating the art of charm, she accidentally fell into cultivation deviation, so from time to time, she would have physiological needs. Unless she can do it herself in time, the consequences will be unimaginable. "What the hell, isn't this clearly a trap? Why didn't you say so earlier?" Xiao Chen finally understood and immediately got up, quickly put on his clothes and pulled concubine Xia up from behind him. At this time, concubine Xia's skin was emitting waves of red, her eyes were blurred, and her expression was hot and restless. Her breath was short and fragrant, and it was obvious that she was about to fall into cultivation deviation. Seeing that the situation was far from good, Xiao Chen immediately grabbed concubine Xia's wrist and infused his yuan qi into her body, temporarily suppressing her restless desires. After a while, concubine Xia gradually calmed down and no longer pestered Xiao Chen for comfort. Instead, she slowly fell into a deep slumber, the red blush on her body slowly receding and her breathing becoming calmer. Only then did Xiao Chen breathe a sigh of relief. "Xiao Chen, how is concubine Xia?" Shen Jingxian asked nervously from the side. Seeing concubine Xia's unconscious appearance, Shen Jingxian felt a little guilty and inwardly blamed herself for wrongly blaming concubine Xia. However, she really hadn't expected that cultivating the art of charm would lead to cultivation deviation. Shen Jingxian inwardly reminded herself that she would have to be more careful when cultivating in the future, lest she end up like concubine Xia and make a fool of herself in public. "She's fine for the time being, but I'm only treating the symptoms, not the root cause." Xiao Chen shook his head as he used his yuan qi to examine concubine Xia's meridians and dantian. "Ah, what? Sister concubine Xia is so pitiful, can't you cure her directly?" Shen Jingxian worriedly looked at concubine Xia and couldn't help but ask. "And there's still an urge in her body, which is what we call a heart demon. I can't remove it and it could erupt at any time. Xiao Qin frowned and turned to Hongzhu. Little Hongzhu, let me ask you, what is the matter with the art of charm that you cultivate? Will a heart demon appear as long as you cultivate? You and Xin Jingxian wouldn't also erupt, right? You can rest assured, Jingxian and I have never encountered any accidents while cultivating the art of charm, so it won't end up like senior sister Xiaofei. Hongzhu rarely teased Xiao Qin, but instead let out a faint sigh. However, what made Hongzhu feel a little gratified was that Xiao Qin had actually taken the initiative to show concern for his condition. This was something that he had never expected, and he had originally thought that Xiao Qin wasn't interested in him. Xin Jingxian also felt that Xiao Qin cared for her, and her heart was moved and warm. She subconsciously stretched out her hand and gently held Xiao Qin's hand. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.